While I was in the garage fixing a few old things, my son-in-law's voice rang out behind me. "Get out of my garage right now. This is no longer a place for a senile old man." My son-in-law's shout ripped through the space that had been mine for 32 years. I froze, my weathered hands tightening around my tools. And then, my daughter started applauding. That's right, finally someone is clearing out this pile of junk. I simply stayed silent and turned away, because they didn't understand that in that very moment they had just finished writing their own ending. Welcome everyone. If this opening caught your attention, don't forget to like and subscribe and tell me where you're watching from. I'd love to see how far this story reaches. A quick note, some details are adapted for storytelling purposes, and any similarities are purely coincidental, but the message is what truly matters. The garage door exploded upward with a mechanical shriek that shattered the pre-dawn silence. I jerked back from the saddle leather awl still in my hand, as Leo's BMW roared into my workshop space, missing my workbench by inches. The smell of hot rubber and exhaust filled the air I had been breathing for 7 years. I am Gerald Hutchison, 70 years old, tall and lean, with weathered hands that know the feel of quality leather better than they know my own daughter's embrace anymore. At 5:47 on a September morning in 2024, I was doing what I had done every morning since my wife Catherine died, working on a vintage saddle in the garage workshop of the Evanston mansion we built together 42 years ago. The curved needle was halfway through a particularly delicate stitch when Leo Carver, my son-in-law of 4 years, decided he needed my space more than I did. He stepped out of the BMW wearing $800 Balenciaga sneakers and compression workout gear with logos I did not recognize. His hair had too much product in it for 5:47 a.m. The expensive smartwatch on his wrist buzzed constantly, little vibrations of importance. "Morning, old man." He adjusted his wireless earbuds with studied casualness. "We need to talk about optimizing this space." I set down the awl carefully, fingers steady, despite the adrenaline beginning to map routes through my nervous system like an electrical schematic. 37 years designing high-failure risk systems taught me to control my hands when everything else failed. "I am working, Leo." "Yeah, that's the thing." He walked past me, examining my workbench with the air of someone assessing real estate. "Sarah and I have been talking, and we really need this garage. I am building my brand and I need a content creation studio, plus a home gym. The equipment arrives Thursday." I looked at the saddle on my bench. 3 weeks of work. The leather was finally softening to my touch, beginning to trust the shape I was coaxing from it. Behind Leo, through the open garage door, I could see the kitchen window of the house. Sarah stood there, arms crossed, watching. My daughter. 39 years old, once an architect with her own practice, now unemployed and hollowed out by the man spraying expensive cologne into my workshop air. I met her eyes across the driveway. She looked away first. "And Sarah agrees with this?" I asked, though I already knew. "She is the one who suggested it." Leo tapped something on his phone screen. "Look, we are giving you 5 minutes to grab what you need. I already cleared it with Sarah. The space is wasted on hobby projects when I could be generating actual income here." That was when I noticed Sarah's hand trembling as she gripped the doorframe. A flash of memory, her 8th birthday, those same small hands trembling as she opened my gift, the first leather wallet I had ever made. She had traced the stitching with one careful finger and whispered that it was the most beautiful thing she owned. 24 hours later, I found it in the trash, replaced by a plastic Hello Kitty wallet her mother bought at the mall. Even then, Sarah knew which love to accept and which to discard. I snapped back to the present, those hands now clenched with something that was not excitement. "I will need more than 5 minutes, I said. "You will need exactly 5. Leo was already pulling equipment out of his car. "Sarah, can you grab that box from the recycling?" She appeared in the garage entrance holding a flattened cardboard box. She would not meet my eyes. "It is for the best, Dad." Her voice cracked slightly on the last word, a hairline fracture in the performance. I wanted to ask her if she remembered the rocking horse. It sat in the corner behind my table, saw half-finished, covered in 3 years of dust. She had called me crying one December night, voice bright with news. She was pregnant finally, after 2 years of trying. Would I build something for the baby? Like I had built things for her when she was small. I started the horse the next morning. She miscarried 3 weeks later. Or, that is what she told me. I never saw medical records. The rocking horse gathered sawdust while I waited for news that never came for grandchildren, who existed only in stories that shifted and faded like smoke. Leo was talking about lighting rigs and acoustic panels. The neighbor's sprinkler system activated outside, the rhythmic chick-chick-chick, punctuating his demands about load-bearing walls and electrical upgrades he expected me to fund. I picked up the cardboard box Sarah had brought. Craft paper creased from previous use, barely large enough for a dozen tools. 7 years of accumulated projects surrounded me. 3 saddles in various stages of completion, a tool chest my grandfather built in 1947, leather stamps I had collected over decades, the vintage Singer sewing machine I restored in 2019. I could take almost none of it. I selected my grandfather's awl first, then a curved needle, a bone folder, a cutting mat scarred by 10,000 careful incisions, the heavy mallet Catherine bought me for our 30th anniversary, a tin of saddle soap that still smelled like her hands. Leo was measuring the space with a laser tool, calling out dimensions Sarah recorded on her phone. They had choreographed this, rehearsed it. I was an obstacle they had drawn a map around. I bent to pick up the box. The leather awl slipped out my grandfather's awl, the tool that started everything. It clattered on the concrete, spinning. Leo moved to kick it aside. My hand shot out with unexpected speed, snatching it mid-spin. For 1 second, Leo froze, something flickering behind his eyes that might have been doubt or might have been the calculation of risk. Then I carefully tucked the awl into my shirt pocket and straightened slowly, saying nothing. The moment passed. "The 5 minutes are up," Leo announced. I walked toward the driveway, cardboard box pressed against my chest. The September sun was just cresting the neighbor's roof, painting everything in that particular gold that comes only at the end of summer. Behind me, I heard the hydraulic hiss of the garage door beginning its descent. I stood in the driveway and watched it seal shut. Leo's laugh echoed from inside the house. Sarah's silhouette disappeared from the kitchen window, and I felt for the first time in 7 years something close to relief. The test had finally begun. Now I would learn what my daughter was truly made of, and whether the empire I had built in secret would ever bear her name. That evening, I stood in the guest room above Martha's garage and watched the sun set over Lake Michigan from a window I'd cleaned myself 30 years ago. The room smelled of old cedar and mothballs, nothing like the leather and sawdust I'd left behind that morning. My toolbox sat on the narrow bed, the only piece of my workshop I'd managed to save, before Leo closed the door on 40 years of my life. Martha Hutchison, my older sister, 72 years old with silver hair pulled into her signature bun, had been a high school mathematics teacher for 43 years before retiring. She'd opened her door without questions. When I'd called at noon, simply said, "The guest room's ready," and hung up. That was Martha. She'd raised 3 sons alone after her husband died, and she understood that sometimes a man needed silence more than sympathy. I opened my phone and dialed a number I kept in a locked contact folder. Vincent Mercer answered on the first ring. "Mr. Hutchison," he said, "I was wondering when you'd call." Vincent Mercer, 41 years old, Chief Operating Officer of Sterling Global Logistics, had been with me for 19 years. He wore Brooks Brothers suits that cost more than most people's monthly rent and spoke with the precise diction of someone who'd worked his way up from the loading docks. I'd promoted him from warehouse supervisor to COO in 7 years because he understood something most executives never learned. Logistics wasn't about moving boxes, it was about moving truth. "How's the third quarter looking?" I asked. Papers rustled on his end. "Revenue's at 15.2 million. Our capital position remains ironclad. The Maritime Transport Association contract came through last week, another 2.3 annually for 5 years. We're solid." I sat on the bed feeling the thin mattress compress under my weight. Through the window, a neighbor's sprinkler hissed against the evening heat. And the personal accounts, untouched. "Your daughter still thinks you're living on a $28,000 pension." "Good." Vincent paused. The silence stretched long enough that I could hear traffic through his office window, the rumble of trucks leaving our distribution center in Bridgeport. "Gerald," he said, dropping the formality we maintained in front of others, "it's been 7 years. How much longer?" "Until I know." "Know what?" I looked at my toolbox at the brass hinges I'd polished every Sunday for 4 decades. Whether my daughter married a con artist or became one, the test had started small. 7 years ago, after my wife Catherine died and Sarah married Leo Carver, I'd watched my son-in-law's eyes during the funeral reception. He'd stood in our Evanston home, champagne flute in hand, his Instagram-perfect face scanning the rooms with the focused intensity of an appraiser at an estate sale. When he'd asked about my retirement plans, with just a bit too much interest in his voice, I'd felt something cold settle in my chest. So I'd run an experiment. I'd stopped mentioning Sterling Global entirely. I'd dressed in Costco jeans and worn my Timex instead of the Rolex Vincent had given me for our 15th anniversary. I'd complained about pension checks and property taxes. I'd become exactly what Leo wanted me to be, a broke old man with a house worth taking. And then I'd waited. "What happened this morning?" Vincent asked. Leo took the garage, showed up at 5:47 with a moving truck and two men I didn't recognize. Said they needed it for his consulting business. Sarah stood behind him the whole time and didn't say a word. Jesus! I grabbed my toolbox and left. That's it. 40 years of your workshop and you just walked away bris skad. Vincent, when you're testing metal, you don't stop at the first sign of stress. You keep applying pressure until you find the breaking point. I stood and walked to the window, pressing my palm against the glass. It was still warm from the day's heat, smooth and unyielding. 7 years ago, I thought maybe Leo was just ambitious, maybe a little opportunistic. But this morning, when I saw my daughter's face when I watched her stand there and let him take the one thing she knew mattered to me, my voice cracked and I stopped. You still don't know if she's complicit or just blind? No, but phase 2 starts tomorrow. Which is, I turned from the window and looked at my reflection in Martha's oval mirror. My face was thinner than it had been 7 years ago. More lines around my eyes, more gray in my hair. I looked like exactly what I'd pretended to be, a tired old man losing everything. But my eyes were clear, and my hands were steady, and behind the exhaustion was something Leo Carver hadn't counted on. Patience. I'm going to give Leo exactly what he thinks he wants, I said. I'm going to let him believe he's won. And then I'm going to show my daughter who she really married. Vincent exhaled slowly. You know this could backfire. She might choose him anyway. I know. And if she does? I looked at my toolbox again, at the worn leather handle, at the scratches from decades of honest work. My father had given me that box on my 16th birthday, the same day he taught me his most important lesson. The measure of a man isn't what he builds. It's what he's willing to lose to find out who he really is. And then I'll know, I said. And knowing is better than pretending. We talked for another 20 minutes about logistics, about quarterly projections, about the Maritime Transport Association's new Chicago hub. Vincent would handle the day-to-day operations. I would remain the invisible CEO, the ghost in the machine. The broke old man in Martha's guest room, who was actually running a $17 million empire from a phone most people would throw away. When we hung up, I opened my toolbox and pulled out the leather punch I'd been working on that morning. The design was half-finished, a Celtic knot that Sarah had asked me to make for her birthday 3 years ago. I'd never given it to her, had kept finding excuses to delay, to add one more detail, to make it perfect. Now I understood why. Some part of me had known even then that perfection was just another word for waiting, for watching, for the long, patient work of discovering whether the people you love are who they claim to be or who they're willing to become when they think nobody's looking. I put the leather punch back in the box and locked it. Tomorrow Leo would discover that taking a garage was easy. Keeping it would be the test neither he nor my daughter saw coming. Because I hadn't spent 40 years building Sterling Global Logistics by being the loudest voice in the room. I'd built it by being the one who understood that power isn't something you display. It's something you hide until the exact moment you choose to reveal it. And that moment was coming. My daughter just didn't know it yet. The basket hit my floor like a bomb at 5 in the morning. 30 pounds of Leo's sweat-soaked gym clothes dumped 2 feet from my head. I jerked awake to find him silhouetted in my doorway, still in his workout gear, grinning like a man who just discovered a new sport. "On you rise and shine, old man," he said, his voice too loud for the hour. "You're on duty now. I want these washed, dried, and folded by noon. And while you're at it, my car needs detailing, inside and out." I sat up slowly, letting my spine crack in what I hoped looked like genuine old-age stiffness. The chemical stink of his protein shakes mixed with cologne filled my bedroom. Behind him, Sarah appeared in the hallway, her eyes sliding past mine like I was furniture. "Dad, could you also fix that cabinet?" she said, studying the doorframe. "It's been broken for weeks." I nodded, smiled even. "Of course, whatever you need." They left me there, and I listened to their footsteps retreat down the hall, listened to Leo's laugh echo through what used to be my house. Then I rolled up my sleeve and checked the corporate watch hidden beneath the fabric before tucking it back. 5:03 in the morning. Day 1 of Phase 2. I started with the laundry carrying the reeking basket downstairs to the machines I'd installed myself 20 years ago. They thought I was gathering their dirty laundry. I was actually gathering evidence. While the first load churned, I photographed the garage they'd claimed my former workshop, now cluttered with Leo's expensive exercise equipment. The burner phone I kept hidden in my rescued toolbox made no sound as it captured every angle. By 8 in the morning, I was scrubbing the garage floor on my hands and knees. My back protested. My knees ground against concrete. And in the pocket of Leo's gym shorts folded among the sweat-stained fabric, I found a bank statement. $847,000 in debt. Credit cards, personal loans, a car lease he couldn't afford. I photographed it carefully, the red numbers burning into my memory. Then I didn't stop focusing on the rhythmic work until the task was complete. Every demand they made, every cruelty, I documented it all. Let them feel powerful. Power makes people careless. I was elbow deep in Leo's gym clothes that afternoon, the chemical stink making my eyes water when my fingers brushed against something else in a pocket, a receipt. I pulled it out carefully, the paper already softening from moisture. $4,200 at a Scottsdale resort charged 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago, Sarah had told me they couldn't afford to help with the property taxes. I'd offered to contribute playing the role perfectly, and she'd patted my hand like I was senile. "Don't worry about it, Dad," she'd said. "We'll manage." The receipt crinkled in my soapy hands. I photographed it with the burner phone, added the image to the growing file. Then I maintained my focus, letting the soapy water mask the evidence I was gathering. My daughter had lied to my face while planning her Arizona vacation on credit cards she had no intention of paying. The days blurred together after that, each one a new lesson in how far they would go. Day 3. I scrubbed toilets while Leo and Sarah hosted a dinner party in the next room. Through the bathroom door, I heard a guest ask, "Where's your father?" And Sarah's voice smooth as silk. "Oh, Dad's not feeling well. He's resting upstairs." I was 6 feet away on my knees inhaling bleach fumes. But to her friends, I didn't exist. Day 5. Leo stood over me at 6 in the morning while I repaired his treadmill, criticizing every movement. "Hey, Jesus, old man, you can't even fix a treadmill. What exactly were you good at? No wonder you went broke." I found the serial number while he wasn't looking, photographed it. Later that day, Vincent helped me trace it. Purchased with a fraudulent credit card, reported stolen 2 months ago. Day 8. Sarah handed me a list of errands that required 3 buses across Chicago. They wouldn't let me use a car. While I was out, I detoured to Sterling Global headquarters, met Vincent in the parking garage for 90 seconds. His face was tight with worry. "Sir, this is insane," he whispered, taking the USB drive I handed him. "Just tell her who you are and end this." "Not yet," I said. "I need to see how far they'll go. Document everything." On the bus ride back, sitting with transfers in my pocket and packages on my lap, I watched a young couple help an elderly man up the steps. The woman held his arm gently. The man carried his bag. They smiled at him. Strangers showing more kindness in 30 seconds than my own daughter had shown in 30 days. A car honked. I realized my vision had blurred. I wiped my face before anyone could see. Sentiment is data contamination, I reminded myself. But standing there alone in a crowd, I let myself feel it for just one moment, the sheer bottomless loneliness of being discarded by your own child. Then I pulled out my phone and texted Vincent a single line, "Accelerate timeline. I want options ready by month end." Loneliness is fuel. I was going to burn their world down with it. Day 11. Leo filmed me doing yard work in 85-degree heat, narrating for his social media followers. "Boomers who can't keep up," he said to the camera, laughing. I smiled for him, knowing every frame was evidence. Every laugh was a confession. They were building my case for me, one humiliation at a time. Day 13. Sarah asked me to clean the attic. The stairs were steep, the space cramped and stifling. She clearly hoped I'd find it too difficult and quit. Instead, I found boxes of old family photos. Sarah at 6, gap-toothed and laughing on my shoulders. Sarah at 16, rolling her eyes at my jokes, but smiling anyway. Sarah at 23, the day she graduated, hugging me so tight I could barely breathe. I held one photograph for a long time, studying the child's face. Then I put it back in the box and closed the lid. This child is gone, I told myself. Accept it. The woman downstairs is a stranger wearing her face. Data doesn't lie, and neither do actions. By September 15th, I'd spent 2 weeks on my hands and knees scrubbing floors and swallowing pride. That evening, I was in the kitchen again, my back screaming, as I worked the tile grout with a brush. Sarah sat at the table above me, reading a magazine, occasionally lifting her feet so I could clean underneath. My knees ached. My spine felt like broken glass. I was 70 years old on my hands and knees, scrubbing away my daughter's coffee stains, while she turned pages 6 inches from my head. The absurdity hit me like a physical weight. I could buy this house. I could buy this entire block. I owned a parking garage in downtown Chicago, worth more than Leo's entire fantasy life. And here I was, inhaling bleach fumes, playing the most expensive method acting role in history. My knee cracked, not the brush against tile, but actual cartilage grinding, and I had to bite back a sound. Worth it? I looked at Sarah's designer shoes, the ones I'd seen charged to a credit card she couldn't pay. Thought about the lies, the receipts, the fraudulent purchases. Yes, worth it. Every degrading second, because the higher they climbed on my back, the further they'd fall when I stood up. That's when Leo walked in, phone pressed to his ear, pacing. His voice was low, but not low enough. Julian, the timelines moved up, he said, and my hand froze mid-scrub for half a second before I forced myself to keep moving. The old man doesn't suspect anything. Once the dementia paperwork is filed, you'll get your access to the shipping contracts. We split it 60-40, like we agreed. Julian Vance. The name detonated in my mind like a grenade. Julian Vance's voice only fragments through a phone pressed to Leo's ear, but I'd have recognized that slick corporate tone anywhere. CEO of Vance Logistics International. My biggest competitor, the man who'd been trying to acquire Sterling Global for 2 years through increasingly aggressive tactics. 56 years old, Harvard Business School, known in the industry for hostile takeovers disguised as partnerships. I'd turned down his acquisition offers 4 times. Apparently, he'd decided to go around me through my own family. I observed everything from the shadows maintaining my mechanical pace, while every sense remained locked on Leo's conversation, dementia paperwork, shipping contracts, 60-40 split. Leo wasn't just stealing my house. He was selling corporate access to my business rival. This wasn't family greed. This was industrial espionage. Leo ended the call and walked past me without a word, stepping over the wet floor like I was part of the tile. Sarah glanced down at me, saw nothing but a tired old man with a scrub brush, and turned another page. I wrung out the brush, slowly watching pink soap water spiral down the drain, carrying away 2 weeks of staged humiliation. Leo's voice still echoed in my head. Timelines moved up. Above me in the attic, I'd hidden a second burner phone, with every conversation recorded. In my former garage, I'd installed micro cameras disguised as old equipment. In the floorboard beneath my bed, the corporate watch waited. And tomorrow morning, Vincent Mercer would deliver the preliminary legal documents I'd requested, power of attorney revocations, property deed confirmations, and a very interesting file on Julian Vance's recent SEC violations. Let them think the timeline moved up. They had no idea that Phase 2 had just become Phase 3, and Phase 3 had teeth. The smell of $30 ribeye steaks drifted into the kitchen, where I stood in the corner eating yesterday's cold chicken off a paper plate. Sarah's laugh echoed from the dining room, bright and performative. Through the doorway, I could see her raising a wine glass, my wine from my cellar, in a toast to people whose names I didn't know. I hadn't been invited to the dinner party. Sarah had told me that morning to make myself scarce. Leo had been more direct. Don't come out unless we call you. Think of yourself as on-call staff. So, I stood in my own kitchen eating cardboard chicken, while 8 strangers laughed in my dining room. I kept my head down, but my eyes never stopped moving. Leo held court at the head of my table. Yeah, we're renovating the whole place. This property's going to be our retirement fund. A woman's voice, your father-in-law doesn't join you. Sarah's reply came smooth as silk. Oh, Dad's not feeling well. He prefers to rest early. You know how it is with older folks. Then I saw her. A thin woman in a gray suit, sharp-featured mid-30s. When Leo turned to refill her wine glass, I heard him say clearly, Rebecca, make sure Julian gets the update tonight. Rebecca Vance, Julian's assistant, his spy. Sitting in my house, drinking my wine, gathering intelligence. I pulled the burner phone from my pocket and took 3 photographs of her profile, sent them to Vincent with a single word, urgent. Leo's voice grew louder as the wine flowed. By 7:30, he was explaining his plans to Derek, a real estate agent. We're looking to liquidate this entire estate by November. Should clear at least $2 million, maybe more, if we time the market right. Derek's smile widened. I can have preliminary comps by next week. Perfect. The old man doesn't know yet, but we've got the paperwork moving. Power of attorney competency hearings, the whole 9 yards. My attorney says it's a slam dunk guy, can't even remember to shower half the time. Laughter rippled through the dining room. My hands gripped the sink edge so hard my knuckles went white. I forced myself to release, forced my breathing to slow. Counted to 10, an old technique from aerospace engineering crisis management. I returned to data collection, cataloged conspiracy to commit fraud, elder abuse, identity theft, wire fraud, federal crimes, recordable, prosecutable, provable. A guest was asking about assets. Leo's answer came easily. Nothing. Guy lost it all in bad investments years ago. This house is literally all he has, and he signed it over to my wife 3 years ago. Oh, every word was a lie. The house sat in a trust I controlled, but they didn't know that. Sarah's voice quiet. Leo, maybe we shouldn't. Sarah, Leo cut her off. We've discussed this. It's handled. She fell silent. Then Leo's cousin Marcus spoke up. So when do we meet this Julian Vance guy? Leo grinned. Julian's too smart to show up here. He keeps distance from the operational details. But trust me, once the estate liquidates, he's got the investment opportunity of a lifetime for us. We're talking about a $60 million portfolio we'll have access to. 60 million. My empire's true valuation was a fraction of 60 million. Julian must have fed Leo inflated figures. Rebecca spoke for the first time, her voice flat and professional. Mr. Vance is very excited about the logistics opportunity. Once the transition is complete, he'll need full access to corporate accounts, property deeds, and shipping contracts. We'll need the documentation by mid-November. Leo nodded enthusiastically. November 15th at the latest. We'll have everything signed over by then. Clean legal, no complications. Sarah stood suddenly, her chair scraping loudly. I need air. She walked toward the kitchen toward me, and for a moment our eyes met. She looked stricken pale. Then she broke eye contact and hurried past me to the back door. I watched her through the kitchen window. She stood in the dark backyard, arms wrapped around herself, shoulders shaking. There was a time when I would have gone to her, put my hand on her shoulder, asked what was wrong, been her father, but that man died somewhere between the garage eviction and tonight's dinner party. I turned away from the window, picked up the dish towel. Guests began leaving around 8:20. Leo's final words echoed, "This time next year we'll be living in California. New house, new life, new opportunities." I pulled out the burner phone and opened the encrypted thread with Henry Redmond. I watched the cursor blink for a long moment before typing. Do nothing yet. Record everything. Let them believe it's working. The reply arrived instantly. Understood. Standing by. See you Monday, 8 a.m. I slid the phone back into my pocket and observed Sarah through the window. She was walking back toward the house, wiping her eyes and composing her face. In 72 hours, that mask would shatter. Monday morning, Henry Redmond would walk into federal court with documentation that would end their performance. I picked up their dirty wine glasses and began washing them by hand. 72 hours. I would let them sleep well this weekend. Let them dream about their $2 million and Julian Vance's $60 million fantasy. Monday morning would bring something else entirely. Leo's brake lights flared red 200 yards ahead, and I killed my headlights coasting into the shadow of a rusted grain silo. Calumet Harbor at 11:23 on a Saturday night was industrial darkness. Perfect for conspiracy. Perfect for what I needed evidence that would stand up in federal court. I'd been following him for 20 minutes. The rental sedan I'd picked up that morning, paid cash, fake name, handled better than expected. Leo had no idea I was behind him. He wasn't meeting a client. He was meeting Julian Vance. I parked behind the grain silo and popped the trunk. Inside a directional microphone, night vision, monocular digital recorder with timestamp function camera with telephoto lens. 4 decades of precision engineering had taught me the value of silence. I moved through the parking lot on foot using shipping containers as cover. Leo's BMW sat under a broken streetlight. I positioned myself behind a stack of containers approximately 150 yards away, set up the directional microphone, tested the audio feed, crystal clear. My right knee screamed in protest. 70 years old, squatting in a freezing parking lot at midnight. If Leo or Julian discovered me here alone with no backup, I didn't let myself finish that thought. Instead, I focused the smell of rust and brine, the cold metal of the microphone in my gloved hands. My father had taught me to hunt when I was 12. Stay still. Control your breathing, become part of the environment. I could crouch here all night if needed. Headlights swept across the lot. A black Mercedes sedan. I adjusted the microphone, started recording, pressed the timestamp button, 11:28 p.m., September 21st, 2024. Through the monocular, I watched a man step out of the Mercedes. Julian Vance. 56 years old, sharp jaw, expensive haircut, going silver at the temples, bespoke suit. I'd declined his acquisition offers 4 times over 2 years. Now, he was conspiring to steal my company through elder abuse and medical fraud. He'd made a fatal mistake. He thought I was a vulnerable old man. He had no idea I was the one holding the microphone. Through my earbuds, Julian's voice came through perfectly. "You're late. This better be worth the risk of meeting in person." Leo apologized, started explaining. Julian cut him off. "I don't care about your domestic issues. Where are we on the competency hearing? Dr. Mitchell and Dr. Cardenas are ready to sign the dementia diagnosis. $5,000 each cash, untraceable. They'll testify the old man is incapable of managing his affairs, poses a danger to himself, needs immediate institutionalization." My recorder captured every word, every name, every dollar amount. Timeline. Hearing scheduled for November 3rd. Once the judge signs the order, we have legal authority to access all his account's property assets. The house liquidates immediately. I don't care about the house, Leo. I care about Sterling Global, the logistics contracts, the shipping infrastructure. Your initial research said 60 million. Is that accurate, more Stas? Leo hesitated. That's what the preliminary record showed, but I haven't been able to access the corporate accounts to verify. Once we have power of attorney, I'll get you everything. Julian's voice hardened. You better. I'm not paying you for a house. I'm paying you for access to a logistics empire. If those contracts aren't real, our deal is off. And Leo, if you're wasting my time, there will be consequences. Leo rushed to reassure him. It's real. Sterling Global Logistics incorporated 1994 5 regional hubs. Once we institutionalize him, it's ours. Not ours, mine. You get your finder's fee in the house. I get the company. They discussed payment. Leo would receive $500,000 once I was institutionalized. Julian would get exclusive access to Sterling Global's contracts. Then Julian asked, and your wife Sarah? She's on board? Completely. She's drafting the institutionalization paperwork right now. My hands clenched involuntarily. The directional microphone jolted. For one terrible second, the audio crackled. I forced my hands to steady, recovered the signal. But something inside me had jolted too. Institutionalization. Once you're declared incompetent and institutionalized, you lose everything: the right to refuse medication, the right to leave, the right to manage your own affairs, the right to be believed. You become a legal non-person. And my daughter was right now at this moment writing the document that would erase me. The conversation continued. Leo provided details: Dr. Raymond Mitchell, psychiatrist, facing a malpractice lawsuit, desperate for money. Dr. Elena Cardenas, neurologist with gambling debts. 2 corrupt doctors willing to commit perjury for $5,000 each. Video evidence strengthens the case, Julian said. Make sure you have timestamps, multiple incidents documented decline. Judges love documentation. Leo explained they were keeping Sarah in the background. Better optics if the concerned son-in-law sought help instead of the daughter testifying. Smart. The daughter testifying looks cruel. You testifying looks responsible. I cataloged every detail. Dr. Mitchell, Dr. Cardenas, Judge Patricia Morrison, November 3rd. Conspiracy, bribery, falsification of records, elder abuse, fraud, federal crimes. Julian reminded Leo, November 3rd. Don't miss that hearing. And Leo, if this falls apart, I was never here. This meeting never happened. Understand? They shook hands. I captured it on camera through the telephoto lens. Only when the parking lot was silent did I emerge legs stiff from 40 minutes of crouching. I walked back to my rental car and sat in the driver's seat. Played back the recording. Crystal clear. Every word, every name, every dollar amount. But when Leo's voice said, she's drafting the institutionalization paperwork right now, I stopped the playback, rewound, played it again. Sarah wasn't being coerced. She wasn't being manipulated. She was sitting in my house using my electricity and writing the legal document that would have me declared insane and locked in a psychiatric facility. I pulled out my burner phone and typed a message to Henry. Full recording secured. Every word, every name. I paused, then added, "We wait." His reply came quickly. "You're sure?" I looked out through the windshield at the empty harbor. "If they think they're winning," I typed back. "Let's see how far they go." The Night Owl diner smelled like burnt coffee and grease-trapped dreams. Fluorescent lights buzzing overhead at 5:47 in the morning, the exact time Leo had evicted me from my garage 3 weeks ago. Poetic maybe, or just coincidence. Henry Redmond sat across from me in the cracked vinyl booth, his reading glasses reflecting the glow of my recording device sitting between us like evidence at trial, which technically it was. I slid it across the table. Henry plugged in earbuds and pressed play. I watched his face while he listened, professional interest shifting to shock, hardening to cold fury. 15 minutes of audio. When he finished, he removed the earbuds and set them down carefully. "Yes, this is federal," he said. "Multiple counts. Elder abuse, mail fraud, wire fraud, bribery of medical professionals, attempted institutionalization under false pretenses. RICO predicates if we want to push conspiracy. Leo's looking at 10 to 15 years federal minimum. Julian Vance could get 20. I sipped my coffee. It tasted like battery acid. "What about Sarah?" Henry's expression softened slightly. "She's named in the institutionalization conspiracy. As co-conspirator drafting documents, she's culpable. Probably 5 to 7 years eligible for plea deal if she cooperates." I set down my cup. "No deals for Sarah. She had every opportunity to stop this. File full charges." Henry nodded, made notes in his legal pad. "Assistant U.S. Attorney Maria Delgado will review the evidence this morning. White Collar Crimes Division. She's good 20-year prosecutor, took down the Kowalski political machine in 2019. If she approves, we'll convene a grand jury next week." "When do we arrest them?" "That's the strategic question." Henry pulled a manila folder from his briefcase. "We could move today. The recording is enough for warrants, but federal prosecutors like to overbuild cases. They'll want more evidence, and more they confessed on tape. They did, but if we wait, they'll keep committing crimes. Every move they make strengthens our case." He opened the folder. "Look at this." He slid a document across the table. Official Northwestern Memorial Hospital letterhead. Dr. Raymond Mitchell's signature, crisp and professional. I picked it up. The words hit me like physical blows. Patient exhibits severe cognitive decline inconsistent with normal aging. Observed incidents include failure to recognize daughter Sarah Hutchison on 3 separate occasions, aggressive outbursts when confronted with routine tasks, demonstrated inability to manage basics, financial decisions, poses significant danger to self due to impaired judgment. I read it again, then again. Every word was a lie. Every observed incident was fiction, and yet it looked perfect medical terminology, clinical detachment, authoritative formatting. If I were a judge seeing this, I'd believe it. That was the point. That was the horror. A man I'd never met had written my psychiatric death sentence for $5,000. I set the report down carefully, afraid I'd tear it. My hands were shaking. Henry watched me quietly. "There's a second one from Dr. Cardenas. Nearly identical language. They're not even trying to make them look independent." I didn't pick up the second report. I couldn't. "These were supposed to be filed with Cook County on November 3rd, Henry said. "Supporting documents for the competency hearing. Now they're evidence of medical fraud and conspiracy." I forced my breathing to steady, looked up at him. "How long do we wait?" "Until they file the paperwork with Judge Morrison. Until they think they've won. We want them committed to the fraud, Gerald. Not just planning it, committed." I nodded. "Prepare the total takedown. Criminal charges, civil asset forfeiture, restraining orders. And Henry, I want Sterling Global publicly revealed during the arrest. I want Leo to understand exactly what he tried to steal." Chicago Tribune business section. Hispanum besigisalmadasens. Whatever creates maximum exposure. Henry smiled grimly. "By Wednesday, the legal machinery will be in motion. They'll never see it coming." I returned home at 8 that morning. Leo and Sarah were still asleep, hungover from whatever they had done Saturday night. I made them brunch, cleaned the kitchen, said nothing. Let them think they'd won. Let them relax into certainty. The next 5 days were a study in patience. Monday afternoon, Leo met with Derek, the real estate agent, in our living room. I did yard work outside, but the window was open. Leo's voice carried clearly. "We'll have legal authority over his assets by November 3rd. List it November 4th. I want sold signs up by Thanksgiving." I photographed Derek's business card when he left. texted it to Henry add to witness list. Tuesday, Sarah asked me to clean out the attic. While moving boxes, I found it a folder labeled Legal Documents, Dad. Inside Sarah's draft institutionalization petition. Printed pages, clinical language, efficient and cold. Petitioner requests court order for involuntary psychiatric evaluation and commitment of Gerald Hutchison, date of birth, March 14, 1956, due to severe dementia, paranoid delusions, and inability to manage personal affairs. Petitioner further requests appointment of Leo Carver as legal guardian with full power of attorney over respondent's person and estate. I read it twice, photographed every page with my burner phone, texted them to Henry Sarah's work. Admissible. He replied within minutes, devastating evidence. Thank you. Involuntary commitment. Paranoid delusions. She wrote this, my daughter wrote the words that would lock me in a psychiatric facility. Each sentence was a nail in her own coffin, and she didn't even know it. That afternoon, while I scrubbed the kitchen floor again, always again, like Sisyphus with a mop, I heard Sarah upstairs in the study typing. The rhythm was steady, purposeful. She wasn't browsing social media. She was writing something that required concentration. I knew what it was, the institutionalization petition. And now, listening to the click-clack of keys above me, I pictured it Sarah at the desk laptop, open crafting legal language that would declare me incompetent, choosing words like severe dementia and unable to care for himself. Did her fingers hover over the keys when she typed danger to himself? Or was it mechanical, just another document like a grocery list? I'd never know, never ask. The typing continued. I continued scrubbing. 2 people in the same house, one writing erasure, one gathering evidence. The floor was clean. I kept scrubbing anyway. Needed something to do with my hands that wasn't climbing those stairs and asking my daughter when she'd become a stranger. Wednesday, I ran errands, post office, grocery store, dry cleaning. On the way back, I detoured to Henry's office downtown. Maria Delgado approved the prosecution. He told me, spreading files across his conference table. Grand jury convenes next week. Arrest warrants will be issued after indictment, probably October 2nd or 3rd. Will they know it's coming? No, that's the point. Thursday evening, a package arrived. I watched from the kitchen as Leo opened it at the dining table. Inside, the forged medical reports from Dr. Mitchell and Dr. Cardenas, now officially documenting my dementia. Leo grinned, showed Sarah. We're bulletproof now. 2 doctors' official diagnoses, dated and notarized. Judge Morrison will rubber stamp this. Sarah looked at the reports, then looked at me, standing in the kitchen doorway. Our eyes met. She looked away first. You're reading a forgery that will put you in prison, I thought. And you're smiling. Friday evening, September 28th. Leo ordered me to make dinner, something decent for once we're having a guest. I was in the kitchen when I heard footsteps on the stairs. Not from the first floor where their bedroom was. From the 2nd floor, where my old study was. I waited 5 minutes. Went upstairs on the pretext of getting towels. Entered the study, my old aerospace engineering books, Martha's photo on the desk, the bookshelf with personal effects. The bookshelf had been searched. I knew immediately. Catherine's jewelry box, the wooden one I'd made her for our 20th anniversary. Cherry wood with brass hinges. Her initials inlaid in walnut still sat where I'd left it. Leo hadn't wanted it. No resale value in sentiment. But next to it, the spot where my corporate signet ring usually sat was empty. I held the jewelry box in my hand, studying the empty space beside it. The ring Catherine gave me in December 1993, 2 weeks before we hit our 30-year milestone. Build something that lasts, she'd said, slipping it on my finger in her hospital bed. Promise me you'll build something that outlasts us both. I'd incorporated Sterling Global a year later. Built a $15 million company in her name, not literally, but in spirit. Every contract signed, every employee hired, every decision made with her voice in my head, build something that lasts. And now, Leo had stolen the symbol of it. I set the jewelry box down carefully. Touched the empty space on the shelf. The ring was gone. But what it represented, Sterling Global Catherine's legacy, 7 years of careful construction that couldn't be stolen by a desperate son-in-law with sticky fingers. Leo took a piece of metal. He thought he took power. He was wrong on both counts. I returned downstairs. 20 minutes later, I watched from the kitchen window as Leo emerged from the house, got in his BMW, and drove away to pick up his dinner guest. As he passed, I saw his face through the windshield. Satisfied, smirking. He thought he'd just stolen keys to my fortune. What he didn't know 3 weeks ago, when I first suspected Leo might search my possessions, I'd notified every bank, every business partner, every Sterling Global contact that the signet ring had been lost. I'd had it flagged as potentially stolen. Any attempt to use it would trigger immediate fraud alerts and law enforcement notification. You didn't steal a key, I thought, watching his taillights disappear. You stole evidence of theft. The moment you try to use that ring, and you will, because you're desperate and arrogant, every alarm in the financial system will scream. I stood at the study window as September dusk settled over the neighborhood. The signet ring was in Leo's pocket, I was certain of it. Platinum heavy, engraved with Sterling Global's seal. He'd be examining it tonight, researching how to use it, planning which accounts to access first. Thorough, methodical, doomed. Because in 3 days, Monday morning, October 1st, I had a meeting scheduled with Sterling Global's executive board. First in-person board meeting in 7 years. Vincent Mercer had the agenda, announced the attempted hostile takeover by Julian Vance, through fraudulent means, reveal the conspiracy. Present the federal evidence, authorize full countermeasures. And when the board asked how I knew about Julian's plans, I'd tell them my son-in-law tried to steal my company by stealing my identity, and he started by stealing my ring. The ring currently flagged with every financial institution in Illinois. The ring that would trigger federal fraud alerts the moment Leo tried to use it. I turned away from the window. In 72 hours, the board meeting. In 5 days, the grand jury. In 7 days, the indictments. In 10 days, the arrests. Leo thought he was counting down to November 3rd and his fake competency hearing. He had no idea he was counting down to October 10th and his very real arraignment. The ring was gone. The trap was set. All that remained was waiting for the snap. Sarah's handbag gaped open on the foyer console table, like an accusation cream leather expensive, carelessly left behind when she'd rushed upstairs to shower. I'd just come in from taking out the trash, Leo's latest command still ringing in my ears. Don't forget the recycling, old man. And there it was, not the handbag itself, the document inside it. I knew I should walk away, knew I was invading her privacy. Did it anyway. Upstairs, the shower was running. Leo had left 20 minutes ago. The house was quiet. Just me and Sarah's belongings sitting there like evidence waiting to be discovered. I reached into the handbag, pushed past the Chanel lipstick, past the Nordstrom receipt for $847. My fingers found paper. Official weight. Cook County Circuit Court, Probate Division. Below it, petition for adjudication of disability and appointment of guardian in the matter of Gerald Hutchison, alleged disabled person. My vision blurred. I steadied myself against the table, forced my eyes to focus. But the handwritten sections stopped my breath. I recognized the handwriting instantly. Sarah's handwriting. The neat, precise cursive I'd taught her when she was 8 years old, summer of 1993 at our kitchen table. Look, Sarah Bear, I'd said, using the nickname she'd loved. Cursive connects letters, connects thoughts. It's how you'll sign your name for the rest of your life. She'd struggled with the lowercase r. We'd practiced for hours. When she finally mastered it, she'd grinned at me with gap-toothed pride. Like this, Daddy. And now, see, 22 years later, I was looking at that same handwriting, reading the words she'd written. Respondent suffers from severe dementia and cognitive decline. He exhibits paranoid delusions, believes family members are conspiring against him, cannot manage basic self-care or financial decisions. Respondent poses a danger to himself and requires immediate supervised psychiatric care. The handwriting I taught her, declaring me insane. I read it 3 times. At the bottom, she'd signed Sarah Hutchison, daughter of respondent. Date: September 28th, 2024, 2 days ago. Paranoid delusions. Believes family members are conspiring. I had them on tape conspiring. I had Leo bribing doctors. I had Julian planning industrial espionage. Who was delusional now? The shower stopped. I had maybe 5 minutes. I flipped to the next page. Supporting evidence section. Sarah had listed everything attached: medical evaluations from Dr. Raymond Mitchell and Dr. Elena Cardenas. Video evidence of respondent exhibiting confusion and aggression. Witness testimony from son-in-law Leo Carver regarding respondent's daily decline. Every item was a crime they had committed. Every piece of evidence proving my incompetence was evidence of their conspiracy. I pulled out my burner phone and photographed every page. Then I saw them. Margin notes, in pencil. Faint. Next to danger to himself. Too much. Next to psychiatric care. Voluntary versus involuntary check with attorney. Next to her signature, point of no return. She'd questioned herself. She'd consulted. She'd recognized the finality, and she'd done it anyway. That's what broke something in me, not that she'd done it, but that she'd done it knowingly. Footsteps upstairs, bathroom door opening. I had seconds. I folded the document carefully, placed it back in the handbag, positioned it so the same corner was visible, arranged everything exactly as it was, stepped back. My reflection caught in the foyer mirror. An old man, worn Target clothes, gray hair that needed cutting, tired eyes, stooped posture. I looked exactly like the man Sarah had described in her petition. Someone who needed help, someone who might be confused, and that was the most dangerous thing about me. Footsteps on the stairs. Sarah appeared hair wet, wearing a robe. Dad, what are you doing? Her eyes flicked to the handbag. Nothing looked disturbed. I gave her a small, tired smile. Just finished the trash, heading to bed. Sarah nodded, already losing interest. Okay, good night. She picked up her handbag, didn't check the contents, carried it into the living room. She had no idea. No idea I'd found it. No idea I'd photographed it. No idea that the document in her hand, the one calling me delusional, was now evidence of her own crime. Tomorrow I stopped being the man she described in that petition. Tomorrow I became the man she never knew existed. She called me dangerous. She was right, just not in the way she meant. Task 3.2. The phone's ringtone cut through the conference room like a bone saw. My daughter Sarah's name glowed on the screen at 8:47 a.m. October 2nd, and for a heartbeat, I considered letting it ring. I answered. Sarah's voice was bright brittle. She wanted to take me to lunch at Bella Notte, that white tablecloth Italian place on Oak Street. Just the two of us. Father-daughter time. I agreed, kept my voice soft, grateful the confused old man she expected. I hung up and texted Henry Redmond lunch trap today. His reply, recording device ready. Pick up at 11. Sarah had never once suggested lunch in the past 6 months. This was reconnaissance or worse. At 11 a.m., Henry handed me a device the size of a matchbook, matte black, with a clip that fastened beneath my cardigan. Real-time audio cloud backup, geo-fenced alerts. The restaurant smelled of garlic basil and old money. Sarah was already seated in a corner booth. She kissed my cheek. Her perfume was the same Chanel No. 5 Catherine had worn. We ordered. She made small talk about the weather, about a charity gala. Then, as the waiter cleared our plates, she leaned forward. Her voice dropped, intimate, concerned. She said Leo had been worried about me, that I had seemed confused lately, forgetting names, repeating stories. She touched my hand. Her fingers were cold. She suggested I see a specialist. Dr. Raymond Mitchell, she said. A wonderful geriatric psychiatrist. She'd already made an appointment for me October 10th. She squeezed my hand. I let my face go slack, let confusion flicker across my features. I asked why. She said it was for my own good, that she loved me, that Catherine would have wanted this. The invocation of my wife's name was gasoline on a smoldering fire, but I kept my expression soft, bewildered. I nodded slowly, said I'd think about it. Relief washed over her face, and in that moment I saw it. She believed she was winning. Sarah excused herself to the restroom. I watched her weave between tables and felt the weight of the recording device against my chest. Every word was archived now, time-stamped immutable. When she returned, she changed tactics. She talked about the house, about how big it was for just me, how a nice assisted living community might be better. She had brochures in her car. I forced a smile, said I'd look at them. Outside, Sarah walked me to the curb, her arm looped through mine. She said she'd call in a few days to remind me about Dr. Mitchell. She kissed my cheek, climbed into her white Range Rover, and drove away. I texted Henry, full confession recorded. She's in deep. His reply, evidence logged. Meeting tonight, 8 p.m., my office. At 3:47 p.m., I sat in Martha's guest room replaying the audio. Sarah's voice clear and deliberate, talking about Dr. Mitchell, about the appointment she'd scheduled without my consent, about assisted living. I forwarded the file to Vincent, add to the dossier. His reply, Gerald, this is prosecutable elder abuse, coercion, false imprisonment, conspiracy. I want to move now. I typed back, not yet. Let them think it worked. When I looked at the calendar, October 10th was 8 days away, the day Sarah expected me to walk into Dr. Mitchell's office and sign whatever papers they'd prepared. At 6:15 p.m., I drove past the house on Ashford Lane. Leo's BMW was in the driveway, and through the front window, I saw him and Sarah together, champagne flutes raised. They were celebrating. At 8 p.m., I sat across from Henry in his office. He'd printed transcripts of every recording. He slid a second document across the desk, a petition for emergency conservatorship, pre-filled with my name, signed by Sarah Hutchison Carver, as petitioner. Dated October 11th, the day after my scheduled appointment with Dr. Mitchell. Sarah wasn't just complicit, she was the architect. Henry asked if I was ready to file. I said October 10th. Let her walk me into Dr. Mitchell's office. Let her think she's won. Then we spring it. Henry nodded slowly. You understand what this will do to her. I met his eyes. She understood what it would do to me. The camera I'd hidden in the garage light fixture had remarkable clarity. On my phone screen, I watched Leo walk the appraiser through my workshop, past tools I'd used for 40 years. Most of this is junk, Leo said. Probably not worth hauling to donation. We'll just trash it when we clear the place out. I lay on my bed at 2:30 in the afternoon on October 8th, eyes closed, breathing slow, the picture of an exhausted old man napping. But my right hand held the phone beneath the blanket, watching them desecrate my past. The appraiser was Miranda Fletcher, mid-40s, sleek dark hair, navy suit, moving through my garage with a clipboard measuring tape on her belt. She examined my tools with careful attention. My Starrett precision measuring, set ground to tolerances of 1/10,000th of an inch. My 1954 clausing lathe. My snap-on tool chest. Leo called them junk. These tools had built components for satellites still in orbit, had machined parts for Mars rovers, had created the prototype that became the standard altimeter in Boeing 737s. Finally, they returned to the living room. Miranda quoted a valuation $2.1 million. And the listing agreement, Leo asked. When can we sign? I'll need the property owner's signature. Your father-in-law, Gerald Hutchison, is still listed as sole owner on the deed. Leo didn't miss a beat. That's being handled. We're in the process of getting conservatorship. My wife, Sarah, will have power of attorney within 2 weeks. November 3rd hearing is scheduled. Miranda nodded. I'll need documentation before listing. Of course, might be a private sale anyway. I have a buyer lined up. They shook hands. Miranda left. I saved the video file and sent it to Henry Real Estate Fraud. At 11:35 p.m. on October 9th, I stood at my dark bedroom window and saw movement in my backyard. The back gate opened. Julian Vance entered. Leo emerged from the house through the back door. They kept their voices low, but my window was cracked open. Julian handed Leo a small amber pharmaceutical container. Twice daily in hot drinks, Julian was saying. Tea coffee. Dissolves completely, no taste. Produces disorientation, short-term memory loss, confusion. How long before symptoms show? Leo asked. Within 48 hours, progressive, mimics dementia acceleration. Mitchell said it's undetectable in standard tox screen. Matches the diagnosis perfectly. Hearing is in 3 weeks, you need him visibly worse. I stood at my dark window watching shadows in my backyard, and I calculated. Not emotions, charges, real estate fraud. Conspiracy, wire fraud, elder abuse, attempted poisoning, assault with intent. They were going to drug me, make real the symptoms they had invented. The meeting lasted 5 minutes. Julian left through the back gate. Leo returned inside. I watched him move through the dark kitchen. The spice cabinet opened, something placed inside cabinet closed. I waited 10 minutes. Then carefully, silently, I moved down the hall to the kitchen in darkness. Behind the cinnamon jar sat the small amber pharmaceutical container. I didn't touch it. Fingerprints would contaminate evidence. Instead, I photographed it and sent to Henry drugging substance hidden in kitchen spice cabinet behind cinnamon. Witnessed Julian Vance hand to Leo, 11:40 p.m. backyard. Audio recorded. Plan to drug my food and drinks to induce real confusion symptoms. Do not approach cabinet preserve for FBI evidence seizure tomorrow morning. I returned to my bedroom, message sent, evidence documented. Less than 7 hours until FBI arrival, and they had just escalated from fraud to felony assault. Sarah's hands shook as she poured the tea, just slightly, just enough that I noticed the surface ripple chamomile and honey, and whatever Julian Vance had given Leo 3 nights ago mixed into the pot. She'd chosen my favorite blend. Thoughtful daughter preparing poison tea for her father, hands trembling with guilt or nerves or excitement. I couldn't tell which. The cup sat in front of me, steam rising innocent as breakfast. And I knew that if I drank it, I'd become the confused, disoriented man they'd been faking in their medical reports. Chemical reality matching fraudulent diagnosis. Perfect for their November 3rd competency hearing, except the hearing would never happen, because in 11 hours FBI agents would be reading them their rights. but they didn't know that. So I sat at the table staring at the tea and began talking about Sarah's 8th birthday party. I made your favorite dad. Sarah said, her smile too bright, movements too careful as she set the cup in front of me. Chamomile just how you like it. Drink it while it's hot. I picked up the cup. They both tensed Leo across the table watching me, like a hawk watches a field mouse. I held the warm ceramic, felt the steam against my palm, and set it back down without drinking. In a moment, sweetheart. Let me just... Sarah, do you remember your 8th birthday party? It was spring, 2003. You turned 8 on a Saturday. The confusion in her eyes was genuine. What dad that was 21 years ago. Why are we... Your tea is getting cold. I continued as if she hadn't spoken. Catherine made chocolate cake with strawberries. Your favorite. We had balloons tied to the mailbox. Red ones. Or were they pink? I can't quite. Where is Catherine? She's gone, Dad. Sarah's voice softened, slipping into the patient tone people use with the elderly. Remember, Mom passed away 7 years ago. Did she... I blinked at my daughter, let my face go slack with confusion. I thought she was just... But the cake. The cake had 8 candles. You wore a yellow dress, with flowers, little white flowers. Or were they blue? Leo shifted in his seat. His leg bounced under the table. He kept glancing at my untouched cup, at the clock on the wall, back to the cup. 10 minutes passed. The tea cooled. Sarah tried again, leaning forward. Dad, please. Your tea. You love chamomile. You always say it helps you sleep. Do I? I met her eyes, my own vague and distant. Oh, yes. Catherine always said. What did she say? I forget. I picked up the cup again. Leo's eyes locked on my hand. I brought it halfway to my lips, paused, set it down. But where was I? The birthday party. We invited all the neighbor children. You wore that yellow dress, and the birthday party story was real. Every detail accurate. Spring 2003. Sarah turned 8. Yellow dress with white flowers. Chocolate cake with strawberries. Catherine's specialty. Balloons tied to the mailbox. Neighbors' kids running through our backyard. Sarah's gap-toothed smile when she blew out the candles. I'd held the camera, captured the moment, frame photograph hanging in my study even now. That was the same day I taught her to write her name in cursive for the first time. Sarah Elizabeth Hutchison. Looping the S with pride. One of the best days of my life. And now I was using that memory as a weapon. Weaponizing her childhood to avoid drinking poison tea. The sweetest memory corrupted. Catherine would have hated this. She would have said, Gerald, our daughter is trying to drug you, and you're reminiscing about her 8th birthday party. And I would have answered, what else can I do? I have to stay alive until tomorrow morning. And the best lie is wrapped in truth. But Catherine wasn't here to object. Catherine was gone. And the little girl in the yellow dress had become a woman who served poison chamomile with a smile. So, yes, I weaponized the memory, and I'd do it again. Because survival requires sacrifice. Even sacrificing the sanctity of the past. 15 minutes into dinner now. The tea sat cold in front of me. Leo's anxiety reached a visible peak. He wiped his forehead. Checked his watch for the 3rd time. The plan was simple: drug. Gerald document increased confusion over next few days. Use it for November hearing, but I wasn't drinking. And he couldn't explicitly order me to drink without arousing suspicion. Then, Leo made his mistake. He reached for the teapot, the same pot Sarah had poured my cup from, and filled his own cup halfway. Just need to calm down, he muttered. This is taking too long. He drank. 3 long swallows. Set the cup down. Poured more. I watched this happen in real time. My face carefully neutral, still rambling about birthday parties and yellow dresses. And where was Martha? Again, inside, I counted. 20 minutes, Julian had said. Onset rapid for oral administration. 20 minutes until symptoms. I continued my story. Sarah picked at her pot roast, watching my untouched cup with growing concern. Leo drank his tea, stress drinking, to settle his nerves. The irony was so dark it was almost beautiful. Then Leo paused mid-sentence about something weather traffic. I wasn't listening. He touched his forehead. Is it hot in here? I feel hot. Leo, are you okay? Sarah's attention shifted from me to her husband. Just tired, Leo said. Long day. Where were we? But his words ran together slightly, very slightly at first, like his tongue was too thick for his mouth. I watched his pupils dilate. Medical school training from 50 years ago, never forgotten. Mydriasis, the clinical term. His eyes widened not from emotion, but from pharmaceutical effect. Autonomic nervous system disruption. The drug Julian provided, likely a benzodiazepine variant or anticholinergic compound, was crossing the blood-brain barrier, binding to receptors, disrupting neurotransmitter function. 20 minutes as promised. Onset rapid for oral administration. Leo touched his forehead again, vasodilation causing facial flushing sensation of heat. Speech slurring, motor control, degradation affecting tongue and jaw muscles. Disorientation, hippocampal disruption, affecting spatial awareness and memory formation. I'd read pharmacology textbooks preparing for this, knew what to look for, knew the progression, knew that if Leo had dosed me as intended, I'd be experiencing this. Except I'd be 70 with different metabolism. It might have been slower, or faster, or caused cardiovascular complications at my age. He could have killed me. Not intentionally, he wanted me confused, not dead. But pharmaceutical effects in elderly populations are unpredictable. One man's disorientation is another man's cardiac arrest. And he'd been willing to risk it. Instead, he became it. His own weapon turned inward. I watched with the detachment of a scientist observing an experiment. Subject dosed himself. Results as predicted. I need water. Leo tried to stand, sat back down heavily. The room is spinning. Sarah, I think. His words became fragments, incoherent. He started babbling, thoughts tumbling out without filter. Julian said the shipping contracts, worth millions. Just need the old man gone. Why can't I think straight? The dementia papers. Sarah signed them, 50,000 from Vance. Why is everything blurry? Sarah's face went white. Leo. What did you drink, oh God? Oh God, the tea. You drank she caught herself. Looked at me. I sat perfectly still, hands folded on the table, face blank. My own cup untouched throughout the entire meal. Leo's head dropped to the table with a dull thud. His mumbling continued but made no sense now. Just sounds, fragments. Confession without structure. Dad Sarah's voice cracked with panic. Dad, something's wrong with Leo. We need to call 911. Dad, please. I didn't respond, didn't move, just watched. Sarah grew frantic. Dad, did you hear me? Leo needs help. Dad, please. Sarah wanted me to speak, to explain, to react, but I didn't. Because silence, I'd learned, was the most powerful response. Words would have given her something: anger to fight against confusion, to exploit forgiveness to claim. Silence gave her nothing, just herself and her conscience and her terror. Silence forced her to fill the void with her own thoughts, to imagine what I was thinking, to project her guilt onto my blank face and see judgment reflected back. Silence was the absence of mercy, the withdrawal of relationship, the void where a father used to be, and it was terrifying, more terrifying than accusation, more damaging than rage. Because rage could be countered, accusations could be denied, but silence just sat there, vast, empty, unassailable. She'd called me an empty shell through her inaction, watching Leo say it, nodding, saying nothing. Now I gave her the emptiness she'd named. Let her experience what empty really felt like. A father who wouldn't speak, wouldn't help, wouldn't forgive, wouldn't acknowledge her existence except through cold observation. I finally turned to look at her, slowly. My eyes met hers. And for just a moment, one brief, terrible moment, my expression was completely clear, sharp, aware, knowing. Sarah froze. The mask slipped. She saw behind it, saw that I knew about the drug tea, knew about the conspiracy, knew everything. The realization crossed her face, horror, understanding, fear. Then my expression went vacant again. Confused old man returned. What dear I was. Where are we? Is it dinner time? But it was too late. She saw, and she knew I knew. Dad, her voice barely a whisper now. Dad, please, we need... I don't know what to do. How long? How long have you known? I stood slowly, carefully, like the old man she thought I was. Picked up my untouched teacup, carried it to the kitchen sink, poured the drugged chamomile down the drain, watching the liquid swirl away. The poison that would have made me the confused old man they had faked in their medical reports, now gone wasted. Irrelevant. Leo had drunk it instead. Karma delivered in a teacup. Perhaps you should call poison control, Sarah. My voice was calm, measured, perfectly clear. It seems Leo has ingested something disagreeable. Her face went white as paper. I returned to my bedroom, closed the door, and heard her through the walls calling 911 with a shaking voice. My husband is, I don't know. He's incoherent, confused. I think he's been poisoned. The operator's voice faint. Poisoned. Do you know what substance? Long pause. Because answering would be confession. I checked the time. 10 hours and 17 minutes until dawn. Until FBI. Until the empty shell became the weapon. Until they finally understood what they'd created. At 5:47 a.m. on October 18th, I dialed the one number I'd sworn never to use unless the war had truly begun. Marcus Dalton, Navy commander, retired 63 years old, voice like gravel and bourbon, answered on the second ring with the words, "This better be life or death, Hutchison." "It is," I said. "Leo poisoned himself with the tea meant for me. He's hospitalized. FBI postponed the arrests. His lawyer is claiming I tried to kill him, and Sarah hasn't spoken to me in 9 days." Silence on the other end. Then Marcus exhales slowly, the sound of a man recalculating a battlefield. "You let them turn it around on you." "No, I let them think they did. There's a difference." "Gerald." His voice dropped into command mode, the tone that had once ordered men into combat zones. "For God's sake, evict them today. File charges. You have everything you need." I stared out my bedroom window at the dawn breaking over Evanston, the house still and silent around me. I know, but I need them to commit one more crime, in public, at Richard Pembroke's charity gala on November 2nd. Then I destroy them with witnesses watching. You're giving them too much rope. They'll hang you with it first. I considered that. Considered Leo in a hospital bed, his lawyer spinning narratives about elder abuse in reverse, about a vindictive old man poisoning his son-in-law. Considered Sarah's silence 9 days of not speaking to me, 9 days of planning her next move. Considered that the FBI had evidence but not certainty, toxicology reports but not testimony, and Leo's desperation had bought him time. Marcus, I said carefully. If I act now, if I evict them, file charges, force the confrontation, Sarah might evade consequences. She'll claim she didn't know about the drugging, didn't know about the fraud, was manipulated by Leo, and a jury might believe her. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. How do you tell a man trained for combat that you're waging war against your own daughter? You don't tell him. You just do it, and you hope he understands. What's the plan? Marcus asked finally. The gala is November 2nd, 13 days from now. High-profile charity event. Chicago's elite, media coverage. I'm going to present a complete dossier of Sterling Global Logistics, every contract, every dollar, every piece of what Leo and Julian Vance tried to steal from me. Then I'm going to show everyone what my daughter and her husband did, publicly, irreversibly, with evidence they can't deny and witnesses they can't silence. And you think they'll just sit there, let you do it? I think they're desperate. I think Leo knows the mask is off. I think Sarah knows. I've been aware all along. And I think desperate people make desperate moves. That's my point, Gerald, Marcus's voice sharpened. Desperate men don't follow your script, they improvise. And people get hurt, I know. But if I don't do this right, if I don't expose them completely and publicly, Sarah walks. And I can't let that happen. You're playing God with a loaded gun, my friend. If you're wrong about controlling this, if Leo does something you haven't anticipated, call me. I'll be there in 4 hours. I will. The line went quiet again. Then Marcus said, Catherine would hate this. Yes, she would. But Catherine isn't here. And the people who are here tried to drug me, steal from me, and institutionalize me. So I'm doing what I have to do. Be careful, Gerald. The call ended. I sat in the dark bedroom phone, still in my hand, and realized I'd just committed to a 13-day countdown, where Leo knew I wasn't senile, where Sarah knew I'd seen through everything, and where both of them had nothing left to lose. The war had begun, and I just told my only ally that I was walking into it anyway. I've spent 60 years building things, companies, relationships, legacies. I've learned that strategy isn't about what you know. It's about what your opponent doesn't know you know. But now Leo and Sarah both understood I was aware. The advantage of the mask was gone, which meant I needed a new advantage. I needed them to commit one final, undeniable public crime. Something so brazen, so documented that no lawyer could spin it away. 2 days later, October 20th, I drove to Sterling Global Port Operations headquarters for the first time since revealing my CEO identity to the board. Vincent Mercer met me in his glass-walled office overlooking the cargo docks dawn, breaking over Lake Michigan container, ships lined up like chess pieces on a maritime board. Sir Vincent said, spreading quarterly reports across his desk. The Q3 numbers are exceptional. 15.2 million. The shipping contracts Vance tried to steal are performing beautifully. Good. I need a complete dossier, every contract, every client, every dollar. I'm presenting it November 2nd at Richard Pembroke's gala. Vincent looked up sharply. You're going public? Sir, are you certain I'm not going public with Sterling Global? I'm going public with what my son-in-law tried to steal from it. There's a difference. I walked to the window, looking down at Warehouse 7, at the rows of shipping containers stacked like building blocks, each one worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Each one a piece of the empire Leo thought he could take from me. Vincent, I need you to do something. Anything, sir? Set a trap. Place one container in Warehouse 7, isolated, visible, marked unsecured, electronics, manifest attached. Fill it with laptops, tablets, cameras, make it look like a security oversight. $250,000 in electronics just sitting there. But install GPS trackers in every device, hidden cameras in the ceiling, silent alarms. If anyone opens that container, I want to know immediately. Vincent was quiet for a long moment. Sir, it's not entrapment, it's an opportunity. I didn't tell him to steal, I simply stopped protecting what he already intended to take. It's an opportunity. Leo is free to walk past it, but he won't. Vincent studied me. The Leo Carver who tried to institutionalize you, who drugged your tea, who's now hospitalized and lawyered up and claiming you poisoned him. Yes, that Leo Carver is desperate. He knows the FBI is watching. He knows his legal bills are crushing him. He knows Julian Vance has gone silent, and he knows he needs cash, fast. So you're betting he'll steal from you. Again. I'm betting he'll make one final mistake, and I'll have it on camera. 13 days. That's all the time Leo had left to be a free man. 13 days until the gala, until the public reveal, until the evidence was presented in front of Chicago's elite, and Leo's world collapsed entirely. But between now and then, I needed him to do something stupid, something I could use, something that would guarantee no jury would ever believe Sarah's claims of innocence. Vincent exhaled slowly. When do you want the container in place today? By noon, I want it visible, accessible, and irresistible. The trap was simple bait, a desperate man wait for him to take. It document everything. Military strategy reduced to its essence. Vincent nodded. It'll be done. But sir, if he doesn't take the bait, then I present the evidence I already have at the gala and destroy them anyway. But I think he will. Desperate men always do. Below us, dock workers moved like ants across the port, positioning containers, loading trucks, executing the daily choreography of global logistics. My company, my creation. The thing Leo tried to steal while calling me an empty shell. The container gleamed in the dawn light like a bear trap wrapped in silver paper. Vincent's voice cut through the silence. Do you really think he'll take the bait? I didn't look away from Warehouse 7 from the container, sitting in perfect isolation under the floodlights. GPS trackers embedded in every laptop. Cameras hidden in the ceiling, beams a $250,000 prize wrapped in a federal offense. Desperate men always do. Below us, a dock worker rolled the container door halfway open, just enough to see the rows of electronics inside, just enough to make it irresistible. Vincent exhaled slowly. When do you think he'll come? I checked my watch, October 20th at 6:32 a.m. The gala was 13 days away. The FBI was watching Leo's every move. His legal bills were crushing him. Julian Vance had gone silent, and somewhere in that house in Evanston, Leo was staring at his bank account, at the hospital bills, at the lawyer's retainer invoice, calculating how much time he had left before everything collapsed. Tonight, I said, or tomorrow. Desperate men don't wait. The container door swung gently in the morning wind, creaking on its hinges. An invitation, a trap, a final test, and I would be watching. The doorbell rang 3 times sharp, insistent wrong, and I knew before I reached the door that the war had just entered my home. Sarah and Leo had left an hour ago for his lawyer appointment. I wasn't expecting anyone. Through the frosted glass panel, I saw a silhouette, tall, expensive posture briefcase or portfolio. I opened the door. Richard Pemberton stood on my porch at 2:17 p.m., 62 years old. Silk Hermes tie Rolex. Submariner catching October. Sunlight leather portfolio under one arm. And a practiced smile that didn't reach his eyes. Evanston Country Club board member, charity gala organizer, and I was about to learn Leo's creditor. Gerald Richard said, warmly stepping forward as if I'd invited him. You're looking well, sharp as ever. I'm impressed 70 years old and still running circles around everyone. I didn't move from the doorway. What do you want, Richard? He hesitated, smile faltering for just a moment, then gestured to the portfolio. May I come in? We have some business to discuss. Regarding Leo, I considered closing the door in his face. Instead, I stepped aside, let him enter, and watched him appraise my living room with the eyes of an auctioneer pricing assets. Beautiful home, he said, setting the portfolio on my coffee table. Classic Evanston architecture, worth, what, $2 million, 2.3? I didn't answer. Richard get to the point. He opened the portfolio and pulled out a document, contract, legal letterhead, signatures. He slid it across the table toward me. Leo owes me $180,000. Now, I'm a patient man, Gerald, but patience has limits. I thought perhaps the family could help. I picked up the document, scanned it. Loan agreement dated 6 months ago. Interest rate 18%. Collateral none specified. This is a personal loan between you and Leo. It has nothing to do with me. Richard's smile tightened. Gerald, Leo is your son-in-law. He's married to your daughter. He's living in your home. Surely you want to help them through this difficult time. Leo's debts are Leo's problem. I'm not selling my home to fund his mistakes. Richard leaned back, crossing his legs, perfectly relaxed. I'm not asking you to sell your home. I'm asking you to consider helping. Perhaps a family loan, perhaps leveraging some assets. You're a businessman. You understand cash flow problems. I understand that Leo made bad decisions and is now facing consequences. That's not my responsibility. $180,000. That's what my son-in-law's desperation cost in cash. But the price and consequences, that was coming due at 4K resolution. Richard's expression shifted. The smile vanished. His voice dropped into a tone I recognized from boardrooms and hostile negotiations, the voice of a man who'd stopped pretending to be friendly. Gerald, let me be direct. Leo is under significant pressure. Legal fees from the hospital incident, medical bills, and my loan. He's exploring options. Some of those options involve liquidating assets. Assets he believes he has access to. You mean my house? Richard spread his hands. I mean, whatever keeps him solvent. And Gerald, young people find ways to get what they need. With or without permission. I'd hate to see this beautiful home damaged in the process. The threat was explicit now. Leo was planning something theft for sale violence. And Richard was here to give me advance warning either out of courtesy or to cover his own liability when it happened. I stood, slowly walked to the front door and opened it. Get out of my house, Richard, and tell Leo that if he sets foot on this property without my permission, I'm calling the police. Richard gathered his portfolio, with deliberate calm, adjusted his tie. Gerald, I'm trying to help you. The gala on November 2nd, there's going to be a significant announcement about Evanston's most inspiring comeback story. About a family that overcame challenges, about a son-in-law who turned his life around. It would be a shame if you weren't there to celebrate with them. The implication was clear. They were planning a public narrative at the gala, a redemption story, with me as either the supportive father-in-law or the vindictive obstacle they'd overcome. Either way, I was part of their script. See you at the gala, Gerald Richard said, pausing on the porch. I do hope you'll attend. It'll be enlightening. He walked to his Mercedes, climbed in, and drove away. I closed the door, leaned against it, and felt the timeline collapse. 11 days until the gala, and Richard had just confirmed they were planning to move before then. I pulled out my phone and called Henry Redmond. Henry answered on the first ring. Gerald, what's wrong? I need the evidence package ready in 1 week, not 2. Richard Pemberton just threatened my home. Threatened Gerald? We need to involve the police. No, I need cameras. Every room. I want documentation of everything they do in the next 11 days. There was a pause. Then Henry's voice, careful and measured. You want to turn your home into a surveillance operation. Yes, can you arrange it today? While they're out. I'll have a team there in 3 hours. But, Gerald, if they're escalating to threats, you need to consider your physical safety. Maybe stay with Martha, or I'm not leaving my home. Henry, I'm fortifying it. The mansion had been my prison. Now it was my courtroom, and every room was wired for testimony. At 6:47 p.m., 3 security technicians arrived in an unmarked van, 2 men in their 30s with ex-military posture and tactical bags, 1 woman in her 40s who carried the camera equipment cases. No company logos, no questions. Henry had hired professionals. The team lead, the woman name tag, read J. Martinez spread blueprints of my house across the dining room table. "Sir," she said, tapping locations with a pen. "We'll install 12 units. Living room 3 angles for full coverage. Kitchen 2 angles. Hallways 2. Garage 1. Exterior entry points 2. And we'll need your permission for 1 camera at your daughter's bedroom door. Exterior only, not interior, legal under Illinois law. Do it. Motion activated. Yes, sir. Cloud backup. Yes, sir. Audio recording in common areas. You're the homeowner. That's single-party consent legal. 4K resolution. Night vision invisible installation. If they look for them, will they find them? Not unless they know where to look. Crown molding smoke detector housings, wall outlets. We specialize in domestic surveillance for legal proceedings. How long? 2 hours, 40 minutes. They worked in near silence, drilling pinhole openings, running fiber optic cables through attic crawl spaces, mounting cameras and smoke detectors and light fixtures, and the decorative crown molding Catherine had loved. I watched from the second-floor landing as they transformed my home into a web of glass eyes. At 9:15 p.m., headlights swept across the front windows. Sarah and Leo returning. I checked my watch. The technicians had been here 2 hours, 28 minutes. 12 minutes left. I texted the team lead. "They're here." She replied instantly. "East exit, 2 minutes." The team moved like shadows, equipment-packed van, pulling away from the side driveway, gone before Sarah's key turned in the front lock. I was in my bedroom when I heard them enter. Heard Sarah call out, "Dad." "You awake?" I didn't answer. Let them wonder. At 11:43 p.m., I stood in my bedroom holding a small remote control, pressed a button. The wall-mounted monitor came to life, cycling through 12 camera feeds. Living room, empty kitchen, empty hallways, empty garage, empty. Sarah's bedroom door, closed. Leo's office, dark. Every angle covered, every conversation soon to be recorded. I rewound the footage too. Earlier that evening myself, walking through each room, testing angles, triggering motion sensors. On screen, 6 versions of me stared back from 6 different perspectives. Living room, Gerald kitchen, Gerald hallway, Gerald garage, Gerald office, Gerald master bedroom, Gerald, 12 eyes, 12 witnesses, 12 pieces of evidence waiting to be created. How many cameras does it take to catch your own daughter in a felony? 12 apparently, and I just installed every one. I leaned close to the monitor, to my own recorded face frozen in the living room feed, and whispered, "Let them come." The screen flickered. Downstairs, a door creaked open. Sarah or Leo awake, moving through the house. The living room camera activated red recording light, invisible in the crown molding. Motion detected. Audio recording on. And I sat in the darkness, watching my daughter cross the living room on a glowing monitor, unaware that every step, every word, every plan she made in the next 11 days would be documented, time-stamped and saved to a cloud server Henry's team controlled. She paused in the center of the room, looking around as if she felt something, the sensation of being watched, perhaps. Then she shook her head and continued to the kitchen. Camera 2 activated. I watched her pour a glass of water, check her phone, type a text message. To Leo, to Richard, to Julian Vance. I couldn't see the screen, but the camera timestamp and her location were recorded. Evidence accumulating, frame by frame. She returned upstairs. The hallway camera caught her pausing outside my bedroom door, hand raised as if to knock, then lowering it. She went to her own room, closed the door. The mansion fell silent. I sat watching 12 empty rooms glow on 12 monitors, and I thought, the trap wasn't at the warehouse anymore. It was here. In every room, in every shadow, waiting. At 10:37 p.m. on October 24th, my phone buzzed motion-detected living room. I watched from my darkened bedroom as Leo unlocked my front door and Julian Vance entered carrying a leather briefcase. They sat on Catherine's couch, and I activated the recording. Julian's voice came through crystal clear. "You have the signet ring." "Took it from his desk 3 weeks ago," Leo said. "He hasn't noticed. Half the time he can't remember where he put his glasses." They both laughed. Julian pulled out documents. "Here's the power of attorney. We'll forge his signature using the ring impression. Dr. Cardenas is backdating the incompetency evaluation to September. Hoffman will file Monday morning. By Wednesday, we'll have legal authority. And the Sterling Global sale, Leo asked. 15.2 million in assets. We sell to my shell company for 3 million. Your cut is 500,000. I need 10,000 up front. Hoffman won't move without cash. Neither will the county clerk or the notary. Julian produced a manila envelope thick with bills. Done. But Leo, if your father-in-law fights back, we commit him. The psychiatric hold papers are already drafted. 48-hour involuntary commitment, no hearing required. Leo hesitated. Then, he won't fight. He doesn't even know we're doing this. Good, because Richard is announcing the sale Saturday night at the gala. Once it's public, Gerald will have no choice but to accept it. And if he doesn't one phone call, and he's sedated in a psychiatric facility, either way, we own Sterling Global by November 1st. They shook hands. As Julian left, he paused. Your father-in-law built a $17 million company and lived like a middle-class retiree. He hoarded wealth while you and Sarah struggled. This isn't theft, it's redistribution. 37 minutes. That's how long it took my son-in-law to confess to fraud, forgery, bribery, elder abuse, and conspiracy. And I recorded every word. If you're still here with me, comment just one word here. I want to know who's still following this story right now. And just a quick note before we continue, the next part includes some dramatized elements for storytelling, so if this isn't your style, feel free to step away here. I texted Henry Redmond, that's enough. Record saved. His reply, Gerald, this is prosecutable. Federal charges, we have them. I typed, not yet. I need them at the gala. I need witnesses. You're walking a very dangerous line. If they execute this plan before Saturday, they won't. They need Richard's announcement for legitimacy. They need the public spectacle, and I'll give them one, just not the one they're expecting. I saved the recording to 3 separate cloud drives and forwarded the file to Henry with subject line, Exhibit A, Conspiracy. The next morning, Sarah knocked on my door, holding a white waiter's jacket. Dad, you're helping serve appetizers at Richard's gala, Saturday night. Family involvement. You'll be on the floor from 7 to 9 p.m., then backstage before the announcements. The waiter's jacket hung like a white flag of surrender. She had no idea I'd turned it into a Trojan horse. It's black tie for the guests, but Richard thought the waiter uniform would be appropriate for you, considering. I took the jacket without speaking. She was searching my face for compliance, confusion, resignation. She found nothing. They wanted me visible, compliant, humiliated. Serving champagne to the same people who'd watch Richard announce my estate liquidation. They dressed me for my own execution. I opened my group text with Henry and Vincent. The stage is set. This ends Saturday. Then separately to Henry, I need the evidence dossier printed. 115 pages, color photos, bound copies for every guest. And I need Marcus Dalton on standby with security. They're planning to commit me if I object. Already printing. Marcus is flying in Friday. Gerald, are you sure you want to do this at the gala? Your daughter will be in that room. I looked at the waiter's jacket, thought about Sarah's tight smile, about Leo's laugh, about Julian promising to lock me in a psychiatric ward. They chose the stage. I'm just providing the script. I called Marcus. It ends Saturday, November 2nd, 7 p.m., Richard Pemberton's charity gala, 200 guests. Full evidence reveal. I need you there, physical backup. They're planning to have me committed if I fight back. Long pause. I'll be there Friday night. Gerald, your daughter will be in that room. She chose her side, Marcus, and Saturday everyone will know it. I hung up and opened the group text, print 200 copies of the evidence dossier, one for every guest. Downstairs, Sarah called, Dad, did you hear me? You're wearing the jacket Saturday. I didn't answer. I was staring at the white fabric, the costume of invisibility they had chosen for me. Camouflage, access, the ability to move through that room unnoticed until the exact moment I needed to be seen. 7 days. That's all the time they had left. At 9:43 p.m. on October 27th, I drove through the dark port gates using a key Sarah didn't know I owned. The executive entrance opened silently. Vincent Mercer was waiting in the 5th floor control tower, 3 monitors glowing in the darkness. Through the glass walls, I could see the entire port spread below, and in the center of Warehouse 7, one shipping container sitting alone under floodlights. Container 47B, the trap. Sir, the container is positioned, Vincent said. Motion sensors active, GPS trackers embedded in every device, cameras operational. If he opens that door, we'll have him on federal theft charges within 60 seconds. What's the total value? I asked. $180,000. Laptops, tablets, cameras, drones, all real merchandise, all traceable. GPS chips activate the moment they leave the port perimeter. Thermal camera showed the container as an orange rectangle in a field of blue. Motion sensors displayed as a green grid. GPS software showed a cluster of red dots, every track device waiting. $180,000. That's what it costs to bait a trap big enough to catch a son-in-law. Do you really think he'll take the bait? Vincent asked. It's risky if he gets caught before the gala. Your public reveal loses impact. I thought about the recording. Leo saying I need $10,000 up front. Hoffman won't move without cash. Desperate men always do, I said. Leo needs $10,000 for bribes by October 31st. That container is worth $180,000 on the black market. He'll come. And if he doesn't, then I have the fraud conspiracy on camera, the forged power of attorney plan, and 115 pages of evidence ready for Saturday. Either way, he's finished. The container just makes it faster. Vincent was quiet. Then, Gerald. Why federal? Why not just let him steal and call the police? I looked at him. Because state charges, he could plea down. Good lawyer, first offense, sympathetic story, he'd get probation, maybe a year. But federal interstate commerce theft, over $100,000. That's FBI jurisdiction, mandatory sentencing guidelines, no plea deals, 5 to 7 years minimum. I want him in a federal prison. I want it on his permanent record convicted felon served time. We sat in silence, watching the monitors. At 10:43 p.m., headlights swept across the perimeter fence, slow, cautious circling. The car passed by without stopping. At 11:17 p.m., I stood to leave. Vincent, keep the monitors running 24/7. If that container door moves, I want to know immediately. Phone alert, email, text, everything. And when he comes, let him take it. Let him load the merchandise. Let him leave the port. Let him think he got away with it. Then activate the trackers and notify me. We'll have GPS evidence of transportation, proof of intent to sell, and a clean federal case. Vincent met my eyes. Gerald, once you do this, once you go public, there's no taking it back. Your daughter will hate you. You'll be alone. I've been alone since Catherine died, I said. This just makes it official. I left the control tower and drove through the dark gates. In my rearview mirror, Sterling Global disappeared into the October night. The container sat in Warehouse 7, waiting. 4 days until the gala, and Leo had no idea he was about to walk into a federal offense. 2 days later, October 29th at 8:11 p.m., I stood in a hallway at Richard Pemberton's Highland Park estate wearing the white waiter's jacket. This was the pre-gala dinner, 40 guests, a dress rehearsal for Saturday. Sarah had insisted I attend to practice serving. I carried trays of champagne through rooms full of wealthy strangers who looked through me as if I were furniture. The waiter's jacket was supposed to be my shroud. Instead, I'd turned it into armor. At 8:11 p.m., I spotted Sarah alone in a hallway. Leo was inside networking with Richard and Julian. I set down my tray and walked toward her. She looked up startled. Dad, what? I dropped the mask, used my real voice, clear, sharp, commanding. Yes, Sarah. Are you happy? Truly happy? Selling the house, your mother and I built the house where you grew up. The house where Catherine died, holding your hand. Are you happy watching Leo auction it off to pay his debts? Her mask slipped, just for 3 seconds. Her eyes filled with tears. Her voice cracked. Dad, Then Leo appeared at the end of the hallway. Sarah, everything okay here? And just like that, Sarah's mask snapped back into place. Her eyes went cold. Her voice hardened. Dad, you need to return to the service entrance. The guests are waiting for drinks. She walked away with Leo, his hand on her lower back guiding her. She didn't look back. I stood alone in the hallway, empty tray in my hands, and realized that was her final chance. Catherine, my wife, Sarah's mother, dead 7 years, now from pancreatic cancer, who'd held Sarah's hand in our Evanston bedroom and made her promise to take care of Dad, was the ghost I invoked in that hallway. And Sarah walked away anyway. I reached into my pocket and felt the Sterling Global master key, cold brass worn smooth from months of carrying it. Proof of the empire Sarah didn't know existed. Proof of the weapon she'd forced me to use. I whispered to the empty hallway. You chose wrong, Sarah. Then I picked up another tray of champagne and walked back into the ballroom, invisible again. 4 days, 96 hours. The warehouse container sat in darkness at Sterling Global, waiting for Leo to make his own wrong choice. 2 traps, 2 timelines, and Saturday night, November 2nd, 7 p.m. in front of 200 witnesses, they would both learn exactly what their choices cost. Richard Pemberton tapped his champagne glass 3 times, and I knew I had exactly 12 minutes before the invisible waiter became the wealthiest man in the room. I stood at the back of the main ballroom in my white waiter's jacket, empty silver tray in my hands, watching him step to the podium, crystal chandelier overhead. 80 guests seated at round tables, Evanston Country Club, members Chicago, business leaders, North Shore philanthropists. Leo and Sarah sat at the head table stage left. "Ladies and gentlemen," Richard began, "I'm delighted to share wonderful news about a dear friend's estate. Many of you know Leo Carver, dedicated husband, community volunteer, and devoted son-in-law, who's navigated an incredibly difficult situation with grace." He paused for effect. His father-in-law, Gerald Hutchison, has been struggling with advancing dementia. Leo with his wife. Sarah's support has made the heartbreaking decision to liquidate the family estate in Evanston to ensure Gerald receives the assisted living care he needs. The estate appraisal came in at $2.1 million. The room murmured approval. Hands reached across tables to pat Leo's shoulder. Let's give Leo a round of applause for his dedication during this challenging time. The applause erupted. 80 people clapping. Leo stood smiling, shaking hands. Sarah sat beside him, hands folded, eyes fixed on the table, not looking at the back of the room where her father stood invisible. 80 people applauded my own funeral. Richard continued. The sale closes Monday, November 4th. A portion of the proceeds will fund a new dementia care wing at Evanston Hospital, named in Catherine Hutchison's memory. A fitting tribute. Oh, more applause. Louder this time. I set down my tray, removed my white waiter's jacket, slowly, deliberately folding it over my arm. Underneath a bespoke charcoal suit, Hermes tie, polished Oxford shoes. I walked toward the front of the room. 1 step, 2 steps, 3. Whispers began, heads turned. Is that the waiter? Why is he walking to the stage? Leo's smile faltered. His hand froze mid-handshake. Sarah's face drained of color. I reached the podium. Richard, confused, stepped aside. I took the microphone from his hand. The room was silent. 80 people staring at the elderly waiter, who just revealed a suit that cost more than most monthly car payments. I looked out at the room, found Leo's eyes, held them. That estate Richard just announced, my voice was clear, sharp, commanding. It's not for sale, because it doesn't belong to Leo Carver. It belongs to me, and I'm not selling. The silence deepened. Let me introduce myself properly. My name is Gerald Hutchison. I'm 70 years old. I'm a former aerospace engineer, and for the past 32 years, I've been the founder and CEO of Sterling Global Logistics, a port operations and shipping company based in Chicago. Last year's revenue, $15.2 million. My personal net worth, $17.1 million. The side door opened. Henry Redmond entered carrying a leather briefcase, walked to the stage, and stood beside me. He opened the briefcase without a word. I reached inside and pulled out a stack of property deeds, spread them across the podium like playing cards. And this is the deed to my Evanston home, owned outright, appraised at $2.1 million. This is the deed to my Sterling Global headquarters building, $3.8 million. These are deeds to 6 rental properties, combined value $4.2 million. I looked at Leo. He was half standing now, one hand gripping the table's edge. My son-in-law doesn't have access to any of these assets. He never did, because I never gave him power of attorney. The documents he planned to use were forgeries. I reached into the briefcase one more time, pulled out the final deed, held it up for the room to see. And this, Richard, is the deed to your house, this estate, the Highland Park mansion you're standing in right now, purchased in 2019 for $3.2 million. Current mortgage balance, $2.4 million. Lien holder, Sterling Global Logistics, LLC, CEO, Gerald Hutchison. I walked toward Richard, placed the deed on the podium directly in front of him. I own your debt, Richard. I've owned it for 3 years. You refinanced through one of my subsidiary holding companies in 2021. You've been making payments to me for the past 36 months. Richard stared at the document. His face went the color of old chalk. So, When you announced my estate liquidation tonight, you were actually announcing the liquidation of property owned by your own creditor, the man whose mortgage you hold. Richard's champagne glass slipped from his hand. I watched it fall, crystal tumbling through air. It hit the marble floor and exploded. Fragments scattered across the stage, catching chandelier light like shrapnel. Richard stared at the deed, his own mortgage, his own house, his own debt. Behind him, Leo was standing fully now, mouth open, both hands on the table. Sarah sat perfectly still, her eyes locked on me. I couldn't read her expression. Horror, betrayal, realization. Henry stood beside me, briefcase still open, waiting for the next move. The room waited. Richard waited. Everyone waited for me to explain how the elderly waiter had just become the wealthiest person in the room. I picked up the microphone again. Now let me tell you about the fraud conspiracy your golden boy has been running for the past 6 months, and the federal theft charge he earned 3 nights ago at my port facility. Henry reached into the briefcase, pulled out a stack of folders, red covers, white labels, each one thick at least 100 pages. We have copies for everyone. Henry started walking toward the first table, started placing folders in front of stunned guests. 1 folder per person, 80 folders for 80 witnesses. Inside, each one transcripts of the October 24th recording, screenshots from the living room camera, Sterling Global financial statements, warehouse theft surveillance photos, timeline of the conspiracy, legal analysis of charges, forensic accounting, 115 pages of evidence, printed, bound, undeniable. I connected my phone to Richard's projection screen, and 80 people watched a 20-foot video of my son-in-law planning to forge my signature and steal my company. The cable clicked into place. The screen flickered to life behind me, 20 feet wide, impossible to miss. I tapped my phone. The projection showed a timestamp, October 24th, 2024, 10:37 p.m. living room camera feed, night vision, 2 men sitting on a couch. The video started playing. Audio came through the ballroom speakers crystal clear. "You have the signet ring," Julian Vance's voice. "Took it 3 weeks ago?" Leo replied on screen. "He hasn't noticed. Half the time he can't remember where he put his glasses." Laughter. Both men. I watched 80 faces turn from the projection screen to Leo, then back to the screen. Leo was standing at his table now, frozen, watching himself commit conspiracy to fraud. On screen, Julian opened a briefcase, laid out documents. "Here's the power of attorney. We'll forge his signature using the ring impression. I've already bribed Dr. Cardenas to backdate the incompetency evaluation to September. The probate attorney will file Monday. By Wednesday, we'll have legal authority." Video. Leo leaned forward. "And the Sterling Global sale, $15.2 million in assets. We sell to my shell company for $3 million. Your cut is $500,000. I need $10,000 up front. Hoffman won't move without cash. Neither will the county clerk or the notary." Video. Julian reached into his briefcase, pulled out a manila envelope. Even on night vision, the edges of bills were visible. "Done. But Leo, if your father-in-law fights back, we commit him. Psychiatric hold papers are ready. 48 hours, no hearing required." Video. Leo. "He won't fight. He doesn't even know we're doing this." They laughed again. The video ran for 6 minutes. No one in the ballroom moved. No one spoke. When it ended, I let the silence hold for 10 seconds. "Then, that man on the left is Julian Vance." I pointed at table 7. "He's sitting right there." 80 heads turned. Julian in a tuxedo started to stand. 2 security guards, Marcus Dalton's team, positioned at exits since 7:45 p.m., moved to block the doors. Julian sat back down, trapped. I have 47 hours of surveillance footage from my home. This was just the clearest confession. The folders Henry distributed contain timestamps, transcripts, screenshots of every conversation, every forged document, every bribe. I paused, watched Leo's face, watched Sarah's hand on his shoulder. "But I'm not pressing criminal charges." The room exhaled. Relief rippled through the tables. Leo's head snapped up, hope flashing across his face. "Not because you don't deserve them, but because Sarah is my daughter. And I won't put her through a trial where her husband goes to federal prison. So instead, Leo, you're going to pay back every dollar you stole, every debt you hid, starting now." I tapped my phone again. The projection changed. New image, spreadsheet, title at the top in bold Leo Carver, complete debt profile. I read each line aloud. Credit cards across 7 banks, $340,000. Personal loan from Richard Pemberton, $180,000. Business loans from 3 Chicago lenders, $220,000. Luxury car leases, $110,000 in balloon payments due this quarter. I paused. Let the numbers sink in. Total $850,000. The room was absolutely silent. Leo sat now, head in his hands. Sarah's hand remained on his shoulder, but she was staring at the screen, seeing the debt total, maybe for the first time. 3 weeks ago, Sterling Global Logistics purchased all of Leo's debt from his creditors. Bought it at 65 cents on the dollar. Cost me $552,000. Which means Leo now owes me $850,000. Not banks, not credit card companies, me. I looked at Leo. And unlike banks, I don't negotiate payment plans. I collect. Richard's phone buzzed, audible in the silence. He looked at the screen. His face went the color of old chalk. Richard, you just received a bankruptcy notice from my legal team. Your $2.4 million mortgage is being called due. Full payment required within 90 days per the acceleration clause in your loan agreement. You signed it in 2021 when you refinanced. Richard stared at his phone like it was a live grenade. You can't make that payment. Your liquid assets are roughly $300,000. You're $800,000 short, and no bank will refinance a property already in foreclosure proceedings. Which means in 3 months, Sterling Global will foreclose on this estate, and you'll be homeless. I let that hang in the air. Unless you agree to work for me. I'm offering you a position as a consultant for Sterling Global's charity division. Salary $85,000 per year. It'll take you 18 years to pay off your mortgage at that rate, but you'll keep your house and your reputation. Richard didn't speak, just stared. I turned back to Leo. And you, Leo. You're going to do the same. I'm offering you a job at Sterling Global Logistics Coordinator, $62,000 per year. You'll work directly under Vincent Mercer. It'll take you 23 years to pay off your debt, but you'll avoid bankruptcy. You'll avoid criminal charges. You'll avoid federal prison. You start Monday, 7 a.m. Leo's voice, when it finally came, was barely a whisper. This is insane. You can't. I can, and I did, 3 weeks ago. Your creditors were happy to sell. They'd given up on collecting from you. I paid cash. The debt is mine now, which means you are mine now. I tapped my phone one more time. The projection changed again. New video, night vision footage, timestamp, October 30th, 2024, 11:43 p.m. 2 men prying open a shipping container, loading electronics into a van, laptops, tablets, cameras. One of the men was clearly Leo. The other was Julian. That's federal theft, Leo. Interstate commerce over $100,000. FBI jurisdiction. Mandatory minimum 5 years. But I'm still not pressing charges because Sarah is my daughter. And I won't let her watch you go to federal prison. The screen froze on Leo's face. Night vision green, eyes wide, caught mid-theft. But the FBI has the footage, and they'll keep it. Just in case you ever miss a payment. Just in case you ever think about running. I smiled. See you Monday, Leo, 7 a.m. Don't be late. I turned from my broken son-in-law to Julian Vance and said the 6 words that ended a 3-year con. Let's talk about the fake intelligence. Julian sat at table 7, security guards 2 steps behind his chair. His face went pale. Julian, let's discuss the corporate intelligence Leo's been feeding you for 3 years. Every report, every financial projection, every strategic recommendation, Sterling Global's expansion plans, contract negotiations, client acquisition targets, all of it fake. The room stirred. Whispers began. I designed every piece of misinformation specifically for you. Leo thought he was stealing secrets. He was actually delivering poison I'd crafted for your business. Every number was wrong. Every timeline was fabricated. Every opportunity was a trap. And you used it all to advise your clients, didn't you? Julian didn't answer. Your consulting firm filed for bankruptcy yesterday. November 1st, 3 major clients discovered that the faulty intelligence cost them millions in bad investments. They're suing you for malpractice. Your professional liability insurance won't cover intentional negligence, which means your personal assets are exposed. I paused. And that signet ring Leo stole from my desk, I've flagged it with every major financial institution in Chicago. Any document bearing its impression is automatically flagged for fraud review. The ring is worthless now. 3 years. That's how long I fed Julian fake intelligence through my own son-in-law. And he never questioned a single number. I signaled the security guards. Julian, you're free to leave. I'm not pressing criminal charges against you either. But your corporate reputation is finished. Your consulting firm is bankrupt. Your clients are suing you. Every bank in Chicago knows your name is associated with forgery and fraud conspiracy. You're done in this city. The guards moved forward. Julian stood slowly, face ashen. He walked toward the exit, past 80 silent guests, past Richard, past Sarah and Leo. No one looked at him. He was already a ghost. The ballroom doors closed behind him with a soft click. Finality. I turned back to the room. I've spent decades building things, companies, wealth strategies. And I learned early that the best defense isn't walls. It's making your enemies think they're winning while you dismantle them piece by piece. I looked around the ballroom, at the Evanston elite who'd applauded Leo 20 minutes ago. I spent 7 years living modestly in that Evanston house, fixing my own gutters at 70 years old, stitching saddles in my garage, shopping at hardware stores. Not because I couldn't afford better, but because I wanted to see who you really were when you thought I had nothing left to offer. I wanted to know if people valued me for who I am, or for what they thought I could give them. And the answer from my daughter, from her husband, from this entire social circle was clear. Look around this room. Families buying luxury on credit, driving leased cars, wearing borrowed status, calling it success. That's not wealth, that's performance. And you all bought into it. You applauded Leo for liquidating my estate. You celebrated Richard's announcement. You smiled and clapped to a conspiracy that would have stolen everything I built and locked me in a psychiatric ward. Because Leo wore the right suit, drove the right car, said the right things. And none of you questioned whether the confused old man serving your champagne might be something more. I looked directly at Sarah. My voice softened, just slightly. Sarah, I hid my wealth to test you, to see if after your mother died, you'd show me the respect and love Catherine taught you. 7 years I waited, 7 years I watched, and you failed. She was crying now, face in her hands, shoulders shaking. You never once asked if I was happy, if I was lonely, if I needed anything beyond your plans for my assets. You never asked what I did all day in that garage. Never asked why I still fixed gutters at 70. Never asked if I missed your mother so much I could barely breathe some mornings. You just calculated estate values, discussed liquidation timelines, planned for the inheritance. My voice broke. Not much, just a tremor. You want to know what loneliness is? It's fixing a roof at 70 years old while your daughter calculates the estate value. That's loneliness. The saddest part, Sarah, is that I would have given you everything. The house, the company, every dollar I ever made, all of it. If you'd shown me even a fraction of the respect Catherine taught you to give. But you didn't. And now you get to watch your husband work for me for the next 23 years, paying back debts you helped him hide. I stepped back from the microphone. The room held its breath. 80 people frozen. Sarah with her face in her hands. Leo's arm around her now, role reversal complete. Richard stared at his bankruptcy notice. Julian was gone. Henry stood beside the podium, briefcase, closed evidence distributed. And I stood alone on the stage, looking out at 80 faces that finally saw me. Not the confused old man, not the invisible waiter, but the CEO who'd orchestrated every move for 7 years. The father who'd tested his daughter and watched her fail. The man who'd won everything and lost the only thing that mattered. The gala floor cleared as if I'd detonated a bomb. I stood at the center of the emptying ballroom, 115 manila folders scattered across white linen tablecloths, each one a 43-page indictment of the people I'd once called family. The chandeliers still glittered overhead, casting fractured light across abandoned champagne flutes and half-eaten plates. The air smelled of expensive perfume, fear, and the particular shame that follows public execution. I'd spent 7 years building this moment. Now I stood in its aftermath, watching my daughter flee through the north exit with her husband's hand locked around her wrist, and felt nothing but the cold arithmetic of victory. Henry Redmond approached from my left, his patent leather shoes clicking against marble. He was 70, silver-haired, dressed in a bespoke navy suit, and he'd been my attorney for 32 years. Behind him, Marcus Dalton stood blocking the service entrance, where a white waiter's jacket lay crumpled on the floor. Henry stopped 3 feet away and extended his hand. In his palm lay my father's signet ring, the one Leo had stolen to forge power of attorney documents. I took the ring and slid it onto my right hand. The weight felt different now, heavier. Henry's voice was quiet. Julian Vance is on the phone with his attorney. Richard Pemberton left through the kitchen exit 17 minutes ago. Leo and Sarah are in the parking garage. Police are en route per your instruction, but they're not coming to arrest anyone. You specifically requested a deterrent presence only. I nodded. The police would arrive, take statements, establish official record. But I'd structured everything to avoid criminal charges. No arrests, no prosecutors. No trials that would put Sarah on a witness stand. Justice without mercy, but also without destruction. That had been my design, so why did my chest feel hollow? Marcus approached. Sir, I've secured all recording equipment. 12 cameras, 18 microphones, 4 backup drives. Everything's boxed and ready for transport. The venue manager is asking about cleanup. I glanced at my watch. 9:47 p.m. The gala had been scheduled to end at 11. I'd planned the revelation for 8 p.m., anticipating 2 hours for aftermath. Instead, the room had emptied in 36 minutes. Vincent finished his call and crossed the floor. Sterling Global's board wants an emergency meeting Monday morning. They've heard rumors about Container 47B and the federal investigation. I looked around the ballroom one final time. The evidence folders lay abandoned like casualties. The projector screen still showed Leo's face from the surveillance footage caught mid-confession. Gentlemen, thank you for your work tonight. Marcus, have the recordings delivered to Henry's office by Monday morning. Vincent, tell the board I'll meet them at 7 a.m. Henry, I need you to file the civil complaints Tuesday morning. All of them. Henry's expression shifted slightly. Gerald, are you certain once those complaints are filed, there's no reconciliation, no family dinners, no chance Sarah comes back? No chance Sarah comes back. Somewhere in the parking garage, my daughter sat in a car with a man who'd tried to have me committed, and she'd chosen to leave with him rather than stay and face what she'd done. I'd given her 7 years to demonstrate integrity. She'd given me 7 years of evidence that she had none. Vincent's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, then looked up. Sir, you need to see this. It's from the warehouse. He held out his phone. The screen showed a text from his night supervisor, time-stamped 9:38 p.m. 3 words and an image. Container 47B, empty. The photograph showed the shipping container's interior completely vacant. Not a single laptop, not one tablet, not a penny of the $180,000 in electronics I'd stocked it with as bait. Someone had beaten us to it. I stared at the empty container and felt the floor shift beneath me. Container 47B had been fitted with GPS trackers on every piece of equipment. It had been under 24-hour surveillance. Vincent's team had monitored it constantly. The theft was supposed to happen tonight during the gala, but the container was empty. The electronics were gone. The GPS trackers were silent, and I had no idea who'd taken them or when. I looked at Henry, whose face had gone very still. Then at Marcus, whose hand had moved instinctively toward his concealed carry. Then at Vincent, whose phone was already ringing. I'd orchestrated the perfect trap, controlled every variable, predicted every reaction, but someone had been watching me while I watched them. The phone in my pocket buzzed. Unknown number. I answered without speaking. A woman's voice, calm and amused, came through the line. Hello, Mr. Hutchison. I believe you're missing some electronics. If you'd like to discuss their return, I'll be at your Evanston estate at 10 p.m. Come alone. Oh, and Gerald, you might want to check your surveillance system. Someone's been accessing your feeds for the past 6 months. The line went dead. The ballroom's chandeliers seemed dimmer, suddenly casting shadows that hadn't existed moments before. I'd thought I was the only chess player, but someone else had been moving pieces while I'd been focused on my own board. And they'd just announced checkmate. At 2:17 a.m. on October the 30th, my phone buzzed once in the darkness, and I watched my son-in-law walk into the trap I had spent 3 weeks building. The motion alert lit up my nightstand. I opened the Sterling Global Security app and watched the thermal camera feed load. 2 orange-red heat signatures moved across the screen. One figure-tall Leo's build worked bolt cutters against the lock on Container 47B. The other acted as lookout. The audio feed crackled to life. Leo's voice, "Hurry up! We have 15 minutes max before shift change." I sat up in bed and watched my daughter's husband commit federal theft in 4K resolution with full audio recording. Container 47B had been stocked with $180,000 in electronics and fitted with GPS trackers on every piece. Thermal cameras covered 6 angles. The exit gate was programmed to lock automatically if the container's motion sensors triggered. It was a perfect trap, and Leo had walked into it exactly as predicted. 23 minutes. That's how long it took Leo to commit federal theft and destroy what was left of his marriage. The thermal footage showed them loading boxes into a white rental truck, quick, efficient movements. Leo had done this before. At 2:40 a.m., the truck started and drove toward the exit gate. The gate didn't rise. 10 seconds passed. 20. The gate stayed locked. The trap had closed. I texted Vincent full arrest. Call Port Authority and police. Federal theft charges, no warnings. Then I'm not coming. You handle it. And Vincent, when Sarah arrives, show her everything. I put down my phone and sat in the dark bedroom, listening to the silence, knowing that in 20 minutes, my daughter's husband would be arrested and Sarah would have to decide who she really is. At 2:51 a.m., my phone buzzed again. Vincent police on site. Leo in custody. Sarah just arrived. She had driven to the port in the middle of the night because Leo had called her frantic trapped. And now she stood in the loading area, watching her husband in handcuffs, surrounded by evidence of federal theft. Vincent would show her the thermal footage, 23 minutes of crystal clear video and audio, GPS data, timestamps, everything. And Sarah would have to choose. My phone stayed silent, no updates from Vincent. That meant Sarah was still there, still processing, still deciding. The question was simple. Would Sarah lie for Leo one more time, or would she finally choose integrity? I walked to the window. The Evanston street was empty at 3 a.m. Somewhere across the city, my daughter stood in a warehouse making the decision that would define the rest of her life. My phone buzzed. Vincent. She's asking for the police supervisor, says she has information about the theft and the conspiracy. I read that message 3 times. Then I sat down on the edge of the bed and realized I was holding my breath. Sarah had chosen. After 7 years of enabling covering, lying after the warehouse theft and the forged power of attorney and the bribed doctors, my daughter had finally looked at the evidence and chosen to tell the truth. I didn't know if it was enough. I didn't know if one moment of integrity could redeem 7 years of complicity. But Sarah had made a choice, and for the first time in 7 years, it was the right one. The handcuffs clicked shut around Leo's wrists at 3:20 a.m., and I watched from the control tower 5 stories above, waiting for my daughter to climb the stairs and face what she had finally chosen. My phone buzzed. Vincent's text, "She's coming up." I turned away from the window and faced the door. I heard footsteps on the exterior steel staircase. Slow, heavy. 63 steps from ground level to the 5th floor. Sarah climbed every one. The door opened. She stood in the doorway, backlit by the stairwell light, her face in shadow. The silence stretched for nearly a minute. Finally, I spoke. "You called them yourself." Her voice was small. "Yes." I turned to face her fully. She looked terrible. Hair-tangled face streaked with dried tears, wearing Leo's old Northwestern sweatshirt. I delivered the truth I had been preparing since 2:17 a.m. "I didn't take your inheritance because you were bad, Sarah. I took it because you were weak. You only chose truth when lying wouldn't work anymore." I watched that land, watched her face crumble slightly, then set. "For 7 years after your mother died, I gave you every opportunity to show kindness, to show integrity, to ask me for help instead of trying to steal from me. You signed medical incompetency documents, you conspired to forge power of attorney papers, you planned to have me committed, all because you were too weak to simply ask." Sarah's voice was barely audible. "I thought you would say no." I picked up the manila envelope I had prepared. "I would have given you anything, Sarah. If you had asked me honestly at any point in 7 years, I would have handed you the estate, the house, everything. But you never asked. You just conspired." I held out the envelope. Sarah took it with shaking hands, but didn't open it. And that's a loan. $80,000. Enough to post Leo's bail if you choose, though I wouldn't recommend it. Enough for first month's rent and security deposit on an apartment. The lease agreement is inside. The 7-year warehouse job at $18 per hour still stands if you want it. $400 monthly loan payments will be deducted from your salary. Repayment period 16.6 years. 0% interest. Her eyes went wide. "You're still giving me money." "I'm giving you a loan. There's a difference. And I'm giving you a choice about what kind of person you want to be." She started to cry. I felt nothing watching her cry. I delivered the final truth. "I will never trust you again, Sarah. You passed the test too late. I'm 70 years old. I spent 7 years watching you fail every opportunity to demonstrate character. You finally chose integrity at 3 a.m. when your husband was already caught and lying wouldn't save him. That's not redemption. That's survival instinct. I'm sorry. I know you are, but it doesn't change anything. I walked toward the door. My final words echoed in the small glass room. I am Gerald Hutchison. I built Sterling Global Logistics with integrity over 32 years, 400 employees, 15 million in annual revenue. My legacy is clean. You will not be part of it, but you can make your own legacy if you're strong enough. I paused at the threshold. Don't come back to the house. Your things will be packed and delivered by tomorrow evening. Then I descended the stairs, 63 steps back to ground level. I didn't look back. I reached my car and sat in the driver's seat. The sun was rising over Lake Michigan. I sat in the silence, watching the port come to life. Somewhere above me, Sarah stood in a glass tower, holding the last thing I would ever give her. And I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no grief, no anger, just the cold arithmetic of a problem solved. I had protected my legacy, cut out the rot, given my daughter one final chance. The rest was up to her. 48 hours after the control tower confrontation, my daughter's entire life sat in cardboard boxes on my front lawn in the rain, and I watched from the bedroom window as Henry changed the locks. October 31st, 10:47 a.m. Light rain falling. Sarah stood on the sidewalk holding keys to the River North studio apartment I had provided. Her car, a Honda Civic with a dented bumper, was parked at the curb. Henry stood on the porch with his clipboard. The boxes were getting wet. 40 boxes scattered across the lawn I had mowed every Saturday for 4 decades. I stood back from the glass so Sarah couldn't see me, but I couldn't look away. Sarah signed the eviction acknowledgement, looked up at the house. At the second floor window where I stood. She couldn't see me, but she looked anyway. She opened her trunk and began loading boxes. She could fit maybe 10. The rest would be delivered within 48 hours. She didn't ask if she could move them under the porch to protect them from rain. Just accepted the consequence. Sarah drove away at 11:23 a.m. I remained at the window watching the empty street. On November 1st at 6 a.m., Sarah reported to Sterling Global for her first day of warehouse work. Vincent sent me the attendance report. Sarah Hutchison. Day 1, on time, assigned to inventory/manifest logging. I deleted it, went to work, didn't check the security cameras. Over the first month, Vincent's reports arrived weekly. Week 1, no absences, performance adequate. Week 2, learning curve normal. Week 3, improving efficiency. I read each report once, filed them. Sarah was a line item now, an employee number, not my daughter. In late November, Rita mentioned to Vincent that Sarah had asked about my history with the company. Rita told Sarah, I started as a logistics coordinator in 1992, making $28,000 per year, worked night shifts for 5 years while building the company. Sarah said she didn't know that. Rita said, most people don't ask. 39 years as my daughter and she had never asked how I built anything. On December 3rd, Leo accepted his plea deal. 18 months probation, 500 hours community service, $180,000 restitution, and all social media accounts deleted. His influencer career was over. 2.3 million followers erased. Leo started his new job as a night shift manager at a 24-hour gym, $19 per hour, cleaning equipment, restocking towels. Sarah visited Leo on weekends sometimes. They sat in the gym lobby and had nothing to say to each other. The marriage wasn't legally over, but it had ended the night Sarah called the police. I sat in my Evanston mansion on December the 3rd at midnight and thought about Sarah sitting in a gym lobby with Leo, 2 people who had destroyed each other, sitting in silence. I thought about Catherine, who died in 2012, who would have grieved watching this consequence unfold. And I thought, this is what integrity costs. This is the price of clean legacy. I had won completely, removed the rot, protected Sterling Global, given Sarah one final chance. And I sat alone in a house too big and too quiet, eating vending machine dinners at 70 years old, working in a garage on engines that didn't need repair. Victory tasted like ash. The legacy was clean. The cost was everything. And I didn't know if Catherine would have approved or called me a fool. 12 days after watching Sarah leave with wet boxes on my lawn, Richard Pemberton asked to meet me at a diner in Waukegan. And I almost said no until I realized the mercy is not the same as forgiveness, but it might be the beginning of peace. December 15th, 11:47 a.m. I sat in a corner booth at the Night Owl Diner watching the door. Richard arrived 10 minutes late and I barely recognized him. He had lost weight maybe 20 pounds. The designer suit was gone, replaced by an off-the-rack navy that didn't fit right. I sold the Highland Park estate, he said without preamble. Paying debts, working as property manager for commercial real estate company now. First regular job in 30 years. I nodded, said nothing. I wanted to apologize for teaching Leo those poisonous values, wealth as status, debt as tool, manipulation as strategy. I enabled the conspiracy. I'm trying to rebuild my life on honest work instead of borrowed status. I don't expect you to care, but I needed to say it. I watched him for a long moment. Forgiveness is not mine to grant, Richard. You wronged yourself more than me. The question is whether you can sustain this change when nobody is watching. Richard nodded slowly. I understand. Thank you for meeting me. He stood left a $10 bill for his untouched coffee and walked out. I remained in the booth finishing my coffee, realizing I felt no anger toward him anymore. Just detached observation of consequence playing out. Mercy without investment. Distance without cruelty. Christmas came 10 days later. December the 25th, 6:17 a.m. I woke alone in the Evanston mansion for the first time in 40 years. Catherine dead, 7 years. Sarah didn't call. I expected devastation. Instead, I found peace. That surprised me most of all. I made coffee, sat in the living room, looking at old photographs. Catherine at 30 laughing, Sarah at 6 gap-toothed smile, sitting on my shoulders at the Michigan Avenue Christmas lights. I held each photograph for a moment, then put them back in the box. I spent the afternoon in my garage working on a leather saddle for the Disabled Veterans Therapeutic Riding Program. By evening, I had cooked dinner for one, eaten at the big dining room table, alone. And I realized I was content. The loneliness was real, but not unbearable. The victory was hollow, but I could live with hollowness. I had chosen this outcome, and I would choose it again. On January 15th, Vincent mentioned that Sarah sits in her car some mornings after her warehouse shift, just thinking before driving home. She had typed a text message to me that morning, an apology, stared at her phone for 3 minutes, then deleted it without sending. Sarah told Rita she realized words were cheap. If she wanted to prove transformation, she would do it through showing up every day for years, not through apologies after months. I felt something close to respect, not forgiveness, not reconciliation. Just recognition that Sarah was learning what I couldn't teach her, actions over words. On February 10th, I sat in Henry Redmond's law office, signing the updated will officially disinheriting Sarah completely. Estate divided among 3 maritime charities and the Catherine Hutchison Memorial Foundation Scholarship Fund. Henry asked if I was certain. I am certain. She made her choices. I made mine. This is my legacy. On March 12th, Vincent reported that Sarah was being considered for team leader promotion. Rita said she was reliable and humble. Vincent asked if I wanted to block it. I asked one question. Does she deserve it based on work performance alone? Vincent confirmed yes. Then promote her. Standard pay, no special treatment, no contact with me. April 20th, 2:47 p.m. Spring sunlight poured through the open garage door. I completed the leather saddle, 32 years of craftsmanship, visible in every stitch. This was what I had fought for: space to create freedom, to choose time without intrusion. The garage was my sanctuary. The mansion was my castle. The empire ran without me needing to prove anything to anyone. And I thought, 32 years, and I can still make something beautiful. On May 15th at 7:43 p.m., I sat on my front porch in the wooden rocking chair, glass of bourbon in hand, watching the sun set over Lake Michigan. I reflected on 7 years, test designed, betrayal, endured, justice delivered. I had no regrets about the test, or the confrontation, or the disinheritance. Only one regret: that Sarah couldn't pass a simple test of basic respect and kindness. But that was her failure, not mine. I raised the bourbon to the sunset, to Catherine's memory, to Sterling Global, to anyone who has ever been diminished, overlooked, treated as less. My voice carried across the empty porch. Fight back, but fight smart. I drank. The bourbon burned smooth and warm. I stood from the rocking chair and spoke my final truth aloud. I am Gerald Hutchison. I am 70 years old. I built a $15 million company from nothing while the world thought I was invisible. I survived betrayal by my own daughter and rose stronger than I ever imagined possible. This is the story of a man who refused to remain invisible, who refused to be diminished, who chose dignity over the illusion of family. Because the most important thing I learned is this: it's not about how others treat you, it's about how you treat yourself. I finally learned to treat myself with the respect and love I always deserved. That made all the difference. I finished the bourbon, set the glass on the porch railing, walked back into my mansion. The door closed behind me with a soft click, final and complete. The story was over. I used to believe that loyalty inside a home was something you never had to question. That was my mistake. This family story forced me to confront a painful truth. Trust without awareness can become blindness. What happened to me wasn't just family betrayal. It was a slow unraveling of everything I thought was unshakable. And yet I also learned that silence, patience, and clarity can be more powerful than anger. If I could tell you one thing, it would be this: don't wait until respect is taken from you before you reclaim your place. Don't ignore the small signs. This family story taught me that character reveals itself under pressure, and family betrayal often begins long before the moment it explodes. I don't see myself as a victim anymore. I see myself as someone who was tested and finally chose to see clearly. God doesn't always remove you from the storm. Sometimes He lets you stand in it long enough to understand who you really are. And in this family story, I learned that dignity is not given, it is defended. This wasn't just family betrayal. It was a mirror, a lesson, a warning. Thank you for staying with me until the end of this journey. Now, I want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? And what would you do if you were in my position, facing that same impossible choice? Your perspective matters. If this story stayed with you, consider subscribing so you don't miss what comes next. Just a quick note: while inspired by a complex family conflict involving inheritance and control, certain elements have been dramatized for storytelling, and any resemblance beyond that is purely coincidental.